A young man sitting at his desk turns back to assure his hungry little brother that he will make something to eat right now. The younger sibling notices a light novel in his brother's hands, expressing surprise that he's still reading a series he claims to dislike. Pointing to a menacing illustration, the older brother admits the Knight's Order commander is a complete scumbag, but the plot is just too engaging to put down. Tying his apron, he excitedly agrees to start cooking dinner, reminding the boy to finish his homework in the meantime. The scene abruptly shifts to a remote frontier village located within the territory of Margrave Talleyrand. Desperate villagers huddle in terror, begging for salvation from a looming monster while a mother tightly clutches her frightened child. A sudden thump startles the crowd, followed by a harsh command to shut up. The arrogant knight's commander yells furiously at his subordinate, Aurel, ordering him to silence the whining countryside bumpkins who dare tell him what to do. A soldier rushes in with an urgent report, stating that the Roche squad needs immediate backup after suffering casualties against a trio of demon bears. Sneering with disgust, the commander berates his men for their lack of practice, unable to believe they are struggling against such insignificant small fries. Drawing his blade with a dramatic flourish, he orders the Roche squad to retreat so he can handle the remaining threat himself. Striding confidently into the misty tree line, he ventures out alone under the night sky to confront the beast. The dense brush violently rustles as a massive, monstrous demon bear shoves its way into the clearing. Stepping firmly onto the path with a heavy thud, the colossal beast finally stands face to face with the unwavering knight. Flashing a sinister grin at the creature's arrival, the commander boasts that he will quickly tear it limb from limb and reduce it to a carcass. His deadly focus is instantly broken by the sound of a terrified scream echoing nearby. The commander's eyes widen in sheer shock as he realizes a young child had been hiding right near the battlefield. Taking advantage of the distraction, the demon beast unleashes a low, rumbling growl. The little boy shrieks in absolute terror as the massive predator opens its jaws and lunges directly at him. Instead of rushing to help, the wicked commander merely smirks, thinking the monster's distraction is exactly what he wanted. Gripping his sword, he coldly plans to cleave the beast in two while it is completely preoccupied with killing the child. Suddenly, a piercing sense of alert flashes through his eyes, violently interrupting his cruel strategy. He freezes in his tracks, thoroughly confused by an overwhelming and unfamiliar feeling washing over him. A jarring sensation pierces his mind, completely shattering his arrogant composure. A sudden vision of a young boy sprinting with a backpack flashes before his eyes, prompting a shocking realization. As the memory sharpens to show the young boy's frightened face, clarity finally dawns on him. He grimly recognizes that this fleeting image is his final memory from a past life right before he died. Sweat drips down his face as he stares downward, paralyzed by the weight of two conflicting lifetimes crashing together. Gasping sharply, he forcibly snaps his focus back to the terrifying reality unfolding right in front of him. The giant beast roars furiously as the sobbing child stumbles forward, desperately trying to outrun death. Screaming for the boy to watch out, the commander abandons his cruel plan and launches himself toward the beast. He dives desperately to shield the boy with his own body, grunting in agony as a devastating blow strikes his unprotected back. As his consciousness fades, he bitterly realizes he is about to repeat the exact same fatal accident that claimed his previous life. The muffled screams of his subordinates calling out for their captain echo through the darkness of his fading mind. His eyes snap wide open as he gasps for air, jolted completely back to consciousness. Waking up to an anxious subordinate asking about his condition, he brushes off a slight headache and immediately asks about his little brother. Thoroughly confused by the mention of a little brother, the worried subordinate gently asks the disoriented commander to verify his name and occupation. Sitting up, he firmly declares himself to be Justin de Vandier, the proud commander of the 3rd Knight's Order of Lafios. He seamlessly recalls that his unit arrived at the frontier a month ago to investigate an exponential surge in monster attacks targeting children. However, mid-sentence, he freezes in sheer panic, internally screaming as he tries to comprehend the modern memories flooding his mind. Remembering his past as Naoki Mayo, he recalls dying to save his brother. Clutching his face in sheer disbelief, he realizes he actually died in that accident and reincarnated. He realizes he is Justin, a doomed light novel villain. Staring in wide-eyed shock, a subordinate stammers and wonders aloud if he is dreaming. Shaking off his lingering confusion, Justin urgently turns his attention to question Aurel. Bypassing protocol, he panics and desperately demands to know if the child he tried to save is safe. Aurel nervously reports that the beast died from the counterattack and the child escaped with minor injuries. Breathing a heavy sigh of relief, Justin breaks out into a gentle smile and expresses his gratitude. Oriel reels backward in absolute shock, utterly flabbergasted to see the cruel commander smile so warmly. Huddled together, the bewildered knights whisper that he must have suffered severe memory impairment from a hidden head wound. Overhearing their hushed theories, Justin grimly realizes his past self was a notorious scumbag. Bowing his head in shame, he silently accepts the massive rift of distrust between him and his men. He groans aloud in self-pity, causing his already terrified subordinate to flinch and panic even more. As he laments his villainous reputation, a polite knock interrupts the extremely tense atmosphere. Arnor steps into the room carrying a tray of food, casually greeting the awakened commander. Reaching out to accept the meal, Justin effortlessly thanks the knight for his trouble. Arnor freezes like a statue, completely baffled by the gratitude while Justin confusedly asks what is wrong. The terrified knights immediately whisper a plan to reassign duties so their seemingly unhinged commander can rest. Stuttering clumsy excuses about his health, they quickly shuffle backward out of the room. Left alone, Justin sighs heavily at how simply saying thanks made his rowdy squad think he lost his mind. Slumping back onto his bed, he feels thoroughly exhausted by the sheer awkwardness of his stolen reputation. Staring blankly at the ceiling, he marvels at the total absurdity of reincarnating into a fantasy novel. Despite the bizarre situation, he firmly states he does not regret sacrificing himself to save his brother. However, intense anxiety grips his heart as he wonders if his sibling truly survived the crash. He agonizes over the immense grief his mother and 8 siblings must be feeling back home. A much darker realization hits him as he fears he will inevitably be killed just like the novel's villain. Tossing on his side, he logically rationalizes that he hasn't actually committed any evil deeds himself yet. Curling up in utter despair, he whimpers into his pillow with absolutely no idea what to do next. His dramatic existential crisis is abruptly ruined by the loud, pitiful growling of his empty stomach. Deciding that starving won't solve his problems, he finally takes a bite of the provided night's meal. He freezes instantly, his eyes widening as he is utterly stunned by the flavorless taste. Analyzing the bland soup, he grimaces at the complete lack of umami and rich flavor. He sadly wonders if this world's food culture is just terrible or if they lack the funds for expensive spices. Forcing down the flavorless bread with a groan, he chews methodically with deep dissatisfaction. Refusing to suffer through bad food, he decides to head into town to clear his head and find something edible. Stepping out into the hallway, he immediately hears frantic squeaking and an angry scream from the kitchen. A rowdy knight furiously yells at the kitchen staff, impatiently demanding his breakfast. The soldier wildly threatens to slice the frantic cook down alongside the monsters if the food isn't served immediately. Justin casually clobbers the aggressive knight on the head, telling everyone to quit harassing the poor cook. He politely asks for kitchen directions, leaving the soldiers completely stunned. The scene opens on the interior of the military camp's kitchen, revealing large pots boiling over a crackling hearth. Stepping into the bustling room, Justin calmly states he just wanted to check on something, causing the terrified cook to stammer nervously. Examining the raw ingredients lined up on the tables, he deduces that the food's terrible flavor stems purely from a severe lack of proper seasoning. He suddenly remembers that his past, villainous self always left the procurement of cooking supplies entirely up to the lowly kitchen staff. Nodding in understanding, he sincerely apologizes for disturbing their work and for the constant complaints coming from his rowdy subordinates. The bewildered cook waves his hands frantically, completely taken aback by the notoriously cruel commander's polite apology. Turning his attention to the unruly knights, Justin firmly orders them to mind their manners while eating, prompting swift and terrified salutes from the men. Huddled together, the bewildered soldiers nervously whisper that their commander suddenly sounds like a scolding mother, terrifyingly corroborating the vice commander's rumors. Stepping out of the kitchen, Justin is immediately intercepted by a deeply concerned Oriel who questions if he should really be walking around so soon. Brushing off his subordinate's suggestion to rest in his room, Justin smoothly announces his intention to head into town for a bit. Oriel respectfully bows, promising to handle all patrol duties while urging the recovering commander to be extremely careful on his outing. Expressing his gratitude with a firm nod and a booming voice, Justin leaves his stunned vice commander behind and heads out of the barracks. The imposing knight strolls calmly down the bustling, cobblestone streets, making his way toward the heart of the lively town. Taking in the medieval architecture, he marvels at how jarring the fantasy scenery feels given he never once traveled abroad in his previous life. He finally halts in front of a large, high-end shop, recognizing it as the perfect destination to fulfill his culinary needs. Surveying the storefront, he reasons that while regular ingredients are easily found at the market, only this specialized boutique carries top-shelf supplies. Slapping his cheeks to force a confident smile, he pushes open the heavy wooden door, triggering a cheerful chime. The cheerful shopkeeper immediately turns around with a bright expression, eager to warmly welcome his new customer. Justin's attempt at a friendly smile instead radiates pure, terrifying menace, instantly freezing the poor merchant in place as the knight politely excuses himself. The terrified shopkeeper stammers out the commander's name in pure panic, visibly shaking as Justin calmly explains he only wants to make a simple purchase. Desperately trying to appease the villainous noble, the merchant stammers that they only sell spices, general goods, and armor. Trembling behind the wooden counter, the shopkeeper frantically gestures for the towering commander to browse the store's inventory as he pleases. Inspecting the organized shelves, Justin's eyes light up with genuine amazement as he discovers familiar spices like nutmeg and cinnamon cloves. He grabs a few bottles with a satisfying thud, silently thankful that he reincarnated into a Japanese light novel universe where familiar seasonings actually exist. His culinary excitement abruptly shatters when he checks the price tags, realizing these basic spices cost the equivalent of a peasant's annual income. Forcing himself to swallow the outrageous cost, he drops a heavy pouch of clinking coins onto the counter, prompting a very nervous thank you from the merchant. Before leaving the establishment, the towering knight pauses and turns back toward the counter to ask the merchant one final question. When Justin inquires about purchasing thyme and rosemary, the merchant helpfully suggests he check the local drugstore. Nodding in understanding, Justin promises to patronize the shop again before making his swift exit toward the suggested location. The shop's heavy front door clicks shut, leaving the terrified merchant alone to finally breathe a massive sigh of relief. Walking back out into the sunlight, Justin realizes that selling cooking herbs at a drugstore makes perfect sense given their historical use in traditional medicine. Eager to test the limits of his new fantasy reality, he decides to experiment with one of his unique, magical items. With a quick mental command, he activates a magical storage skill, causing his extremely expensive purchases to vanish into thin air with a soft thump. Gazing at the small magic bag strapped to his waist, he marvels at how it defies physics by storing 10 times its size, further cementing his fantasy immersion. His peaceful stroll is abruptly interrupted by hushed, fearful whispers from nearby townsfolk recognizing him as the notorious Third Knight's commander. Eavesdropping on the local gossip, he overhears a scandalous rumor claiming his past self maliciously tried to seduce the crown prince's fiancée. The gossiping peasants declare that crossing the royal family is a blatant death wish, painting his past self as an unimaginably arrogant fool. The rumors continue to spiral, revealing that his prestigious family disowned him over the scandal and dumped him into the unruly Third Knights to quietly dispose of him. The townsfolk bitterly complain that the already unruly Third Knight's order has only grown more menacing and corrupt since he took command of them. A villager frantically shushes his friend, quietly admitting that while the commander slays monsters, his terrifying presence makes him the real monster of the town. A peasant woman twitches and squeaks in sheer terror, throwing a frightened glance at the imposing commander. Justin sighs heavily, rationally acknowledging that the townsfolk's passionate hatred makes complete sense given the violently rowdy reputation of the Third Knight's order. Rubbing the back of his neck with a heavy groan, he realizes he must completely rebuild the tarnished reputation of the entire Knight's order alongside his own. The clack of his heavy boots echoes down the cobblestone street as he spots the local drugstore just up ahead. A desperate child's voice suddenly rings out, pleading for the shopkeeper's help and promising to pay him eventually. The stern drugstore owner violently refuses the request, yelling at the destitute children that he won't give them anything if they lack money. Justin steps into the fray and calmly asks what the trouble is, which instantly terrifies the shop owner into recognizing the notorious noble. Frantically shooing the kids away, the panicking merchant explains that the penniless brats are pestering him for herbs and offers to kick them out immediately. The towering knight falls completely silent, staring down thoughtfully at the frightened children huddled together. Leaning slightly forward, Justin gently asks the trembling boy why he desperately needs the medicinal herbs. The young boy stammers nervously, visibly intimidated by the massive knight looming over him. Accompanied by a weak cough from his younger sister, the boy explains that their mother fell terribly ill after ruining her health trying to work in their father's place. The destitute boy admits they have absolutely no money or food left, prompting Justin to ask about the whereabouts of their father. The boy reveals his father was a local craftsman who was tragically drafted to fight the increasing monster threat around the frontier. He sorrowfully adds that his father was severely injured by monsters during his service and now spends all his time drinking. Shocking both the merchant and the children, Justin firmly commands the shop owner to provide the kids their requested herbs alongside his own order, declaring he will foot the entire bill. Sweating profusely, the merchant asks if he is truly sure, to which Justin casually insists the payment doubles as an extra tip for the establishment. Turning back to the stunned children, the commander offers a gentle reassurance that they shouldn't worry since they need the medicine. He pauses thoughtfully, holding up a single finger as he proposes a small condition in exchange for his extreme generosity. Flashing a remarkably kind smile, Justin asks if the young boy can show him exactly where their father is. The boy hesitates in absolute terror, fearfully asking if the imposing knight plans to do something mean to his father, which Justin immediately swears against. By the time Justin successfully finishes his conversation with the struggling family, the evening sky has completely darkened into night. Walking back alone under the stars, he pieces together the father's tragic spiral, realizing the man drank to cope with the agonizing guilt of becoming an injured burden on his wife. Furious at the kingdom's blatant negligence, Justin resolves to demand an audience with the Margrave to secure delayed compensation for the injured veteran. A fond flashback suddenly shows the grateful children bowing respectfully to the towering knight as he leaves their humble home. The young boy and his little sister beam with pure joy, profusely thanking the Mr. Commander for saving their desperate family. Justin gently brushes off their overwhelming praise, kindly instructing them to make sure they take good care of their parents. The children wave excitedly into the darkness, loudly calling him Big Brother as they shout their final farewells. The innocent, familiar farewell echoes deeply within Justin's mind, striking a profoundly personal chord regarding his past life. Clenching his fist with renewed, burning determination, he realizes that his current self can still make a massively positive difference in this doomed timeline. He mentally resolves to walk a righteous path to divert his narrative route away from absolute ruin, noting he still has plenty of time before the original Justin crosses the point of no return. A confident, genuine smile graces his face as he proudly embraces his former identity, declaring himself a big brother above all else. Arriving back at the silent military lodgings, Justin wanders the completely empty halls, utterly confused about where all his subordinates have gone. A booming voice suddenly echoes through the crisp night air, loudly ordering the knights to commence a fierce mock combat fight. Justin steps out into the expansive training yard, silently observing his dedicated men engaging in intense sparring sessions under the torchlight. Heavy wooden swords clash violently in the dark as the determined knights train relentlessly against one another. Impressed by their unwavering dedication, Justin praises their admirable night practice just as a sudden, agonized shout pierces the courtyard. Absolute panic erupts among the sparring knights as someone frantically yells that Cassius has been badly injured. Holding a bleeding arm wound, Cassius tries to downplay the injury while another knight frantically calls for a healer, noting a blocked sword swerved completely out of control. Springing instantly into action, Justin abruptly turns and barks an authoritative command to raise the bleeding wound directly above the heart. He swiftly orders the rest of the men to continue their training while commanding a stunned Oriel to fetch binding materials immediately. Tying a tight tourniquet around the injured limb, Justin pragmatically explains that healing magic cannot possibly replace lost blood. Cassius stubbornly insists he will heal quickly, but Justin gently offers his broad shoulder for support and declares they are heading straight to the treatment room. The injured knight stares up at the towering, infamous commander, completely taken aback by the sudden display of genuine, fatherly care. Losing his patience with the stubborn subordinate, Justin furiously roars at Cassius to just shut up and do exactly as his big brother says. The entire training yard falls dead silent, sweating in sheer bewilderment as the fearsome, tyrannical commander accidentally refers to himself as their big brother. The sun rises over the sprawling military encampment, signaling the dawn of a brand new morning. A knight eagerly salutes his imposing leader, prompting Justin to calmly return the cheerful morning greeting. Strolling through the camp, the reincarnated commander reflects on how he would normally be making lunchboxes for his younger brothers right now while planning to request an audience with the Margrave. Shaking off his nostalgic thoughts, he resolves to inspect his subordinates' morning training sessions next. The dusty training grounds come into view as the dedicated knights sweat through their rigorous physical routines. Stepping up to his sparring partners, a knight casually asks Cassius if his recently injured arm is still causing him any pain. Flexing his completely healed limb, Cassius happily reports that his arm feels as good as new thanks to the effective healing magic. The knight nods in agreement, pointing out that the rapid recovery was likely aided by their commander's surprisingly perfect first aid. Pausing his stretches, the knight asks Cassius what the commander meant by that incredibly bizarre statement he made during the treatment. Cassius chuckles as he reminds his bewildered comrades about the specific phrase that completely caught them off guard the previous night. He dramatically mimics the fearsome commander's authoritative voice, shouting at them to listen to what their big brother says. The knights burst out laughing, admitting that hearing such a familial phrase from their ruthless captain surprised the absolute hell out of them. Cassius wryly notes that nobody else in the camp would ever believe their crazy story while casually thanking his friend. Leaning on his wooden sword, Cassius points out that Justin also said thanks and offered his shoulder, proving something is definitely up with him. Another knight agrees entirely, noting that the old commander used to coldly dismiss them the second their wounds were patched up. The knight shares another bizarre encounter, recalling how Justin shocked both him and the healer by demanding he say thanks before leaving. The gossiping soldiers remain utterly astounded that their famously ruthless commander is suddenly enforcing basic manners. One knight jokingly suggests that Justin has finally awakened to love, causing the others to shudder with absolute disgust at the terrifying thought. The jovial atmosphere shatters instantly as a looming shadow falls over the gossiping men. Radiating pure menace, Justin glares down at his slacking subordinates and coldly notes how easily they take things while poking fun at people during morning training. The terrified knights freeze in absolute horror as their commander declares this the perfect opportunity for punishment. Chuckling darkly, he orders the men to perform 1,000 sword swings to correct their rusty basics, adding it as a mandatory extra exercise. As the men erupt into desperate groans about the unfairness, Justin taps Cassius on the shoulder and exempts him due to his recent injury. The brief wave of relief is instantly crushed as Justin heavily grabs Cassius from behind. Flashing a sinister grin, the commander forces Cassius into a grueling long-distance run to train his legs, promising to keep a very careful eye on his health. Cassius stammers out a terrified thank you while his sympathetic comrades watch his miserable doom unfold. Tapping the gloomy knight's back, Justin cheerfully orders his squad to keep working hard until lunch. He promises a special reward for their intense efforts, telling the bewildered men to look forward to it. The exhausted knights exchange thoroughly confused glances, wondering what kind of bizarre reward their unhinged commander has in mind. Hours later, the exhausted men shamble toward the cafeteria, their heavy armor rattling with every sluggish step. Groaning about their aching legs and heavy arms, the starving knights desperately rush to get their food. One of the men gently warns Cassius to keep his big mouth shut from now on to avoid triggering another hellish workout. Sniffing the air, the knights notice the patrol teams have already started eating their meals. The weary soldiers stumble into the bustling mess hall, drawn forward by a surprisingly appetizing aroma. Eyeing their cheerful comrades, the men wonder if the cooks prepared a special menu today since the air smells incredibly nice. Standing confidently by the serving line, Justin calmly welcomes his exhausted squad back from their brutal training. Saluting proudly, a starving knight loudly declares he completed his training to a T and demands his promised reward. Holding out a steaming bowl, Justin casually instructs the eager knight to taste the food. The confused soldier takes a hesitant, loud sip from the wooden bowl. As the knight realizes it is just their usual bland soup, Justin chuckles darkly and tells him to relax as a heavy thumping sound echoes through the hall holding up a few small, dark spheres. Justin casually declares them to be the promised reward, leaving a confused knight wondering if they are just medicinal pills. Staring in absolute shock, another subordinate stammers out the commander's name upon realizing the supposed medicine is actually incredibly rare black pepper. Justin calmly drops the precious peppercorns into a wooden grinder, smoothly turning the handle as the expensive spices clink against the metal. The bewildered men marvel at the sheer luxury, noting that just a tiny pinch of the spice costs a gold coin, equal to a whole month's wage for the common soldiers. Acknowledging their awe with a confident smirk, Justin hands the freshly ground pepper to the head chef and instructs him to distribute it among the men. The nervous chef quickly accepts the spice and passes out the newly seasoned soup, apologizing for the wait while urging the hungry knights to dig in. A highly skeptical knight raises the wooden bowl to his lips, taking a very tentative sip of the newly enhanced broth. His eyes bulge with sheer delight as he loudly declares that the soup tastes completely different and is incredibly delicious. Chuckling darkly at their utter surprise, Justin casually explains that he simply increased the soup's saltiness and added some basic basil for seasoning. Despite agreeing that delicious meals are the perfect motivation, a hesitant knight questions if giving them such high-quality spices is truly appropriate. Justin firmly agrees with their cautious sentiment, his calm and commanding demeanor easily silencing the mess hall's lingering doubts. He logically explains that intense sweating depletes vital nutrients that must be replenished, stressing that knights require bodies capable of moving optimally at all times. While fully understanding the health aspect, A knight remains utterly amazed that Justin masterfully used pepper to give their normally bland food a rich, satisfying flavor. The head chef expresses his own profound awe, admitting he never would have thought to use medicinal leaves to actively enhance a regular meal. Bowing his head in deep regret, the devastated chef confesses he is completely ashamed of his own severe culinary shortcomings. Gently dismissing the dramatic apology, Justin sincerely praises the cook for managing to provide a stable diet despite wrestling with a severely limited budget. The overwhelmed chef bursts into dramatic tears, loudly wailing that he absolutely does not deserve such kind and forgiving words from his commander. Turning back to his rowdy men, Justin asks if they want to continue eating delicious meals from now on, prompting them to enthusiastically scream their agreement. Pleased by their deafening enthusiasm, Justin flashes a confident smirk and announces he has a practical proposal to make. He suggests the knights chip in once a month from their personal drinking funds, allowing the chef to buy better ingredients and utilize his skills without budget constraints. The room instantly erupts in a massive chorus of eager agreement, with the hungry knights shouting that there is no need to even think twice about chipping in. Justin glances over at Aurel, asking if his cautious vice commander harbors any lingering objections to the new financial arrangement. Aurel quickly clarifies he is greatly in favor of the idea, suggesting they run the fundraising proposal by the administrative clerk to make it completely official. Justin nods his head gratefully, expressing his sincere appreciation for Aurel's diligent and supportive administrative insight. The peaceful moment is abruptly shattered by the thunderous, pitiful growl of a starving man's empty stomach. A desperately hungry knight screams that mere seasoning is nowhere near enough to satisfy him, prompting an amused Justin to tell him to take a seat. The starving soldier eagerly drops into a wooden chair, practically drooling as he stares down at his steaming, perfectly seasoned bowl of soup. He excitedly grabs his utensils and loudly declares he won't hold back, marveling at how incredibly appetizing the meal looks. Before he can take a single bite, Justin violently smacks the impatient knight right over the head with a sharp, echoing thud. Rubbing his sore skull, the bewildered knight guesses he needs to wash his hands, only for Justin to scold him that there is something much more important he must do first. The commander furiously demands he say thanks for the food before eating, completely catching the confused, hungry soldier off guard. Justin sternly warns that nobody will touch their food until they show proper gratitude to both the cooks and the ingredients, shattering their misconception that only rich nobles pray. Whispering nervously among themselves, the battered knights side-eye their demanding captain, firmly convinced that his mind has finally snapped. Realizing they have absolutely no choice but to comply, the grumbling men awkwardly agree to pray, admitting they haven't done so since they were little brats. Clasping their calloused hands together, the gruff soldiers close their eyes and clumsily thank the Lord for providing them with their daily food. In perfect, booming unison, the entire dining hall erupts with a thunderous, grateful shout of thanks for the meal. Hearing the unified, thunderous shout, Justin's eyes widen slightly in profound, silent surprise. A deeply nostalgic smile softens his hardened features as he quietly reflects on how this exact communal scene mirrors his past life in Japan. The sentimental moment is suddenly interrupted by a soldier rushing into the hall to deliver an urgent report directly to the commander. Standing stiffly at attention, the messenger urgently announces that his report directly concerns Justin's previously requested audience with the Margrave. A nervous voice announces that permission has been granted, though the speaker hesitates slightly before continuing. The grand, imposing manor house of Margrave Talleyrand stands tall against the bright, clear sky. Stepping out of a grand carriage, Justin realizes the sudden invitation is likely a tactic to quickly dismiss him as a troublesome individual. Looking up at the impressive structure, he acknowledges that the Margrave's wariness makes perfect sense given his complicated relationship with her. He recalls that she is Diane de Talleyrand, the Margrave's sole daughter and the highly esteemed fiancée of the Crown Prince. Justin grimly remembers that his past self aggressively made moves on Diane solely out of spiteful animosity toward the Crown Prince. In the original light novel, the villainous Justin eventually forced Diane into a relationship against her will. Tragically, the readers viewed her merely as a sub-heroine, and the relentless torment eventually drove her to take her own life and exit the story. Justin groans in sheer disbelief at his own identity, utterly disgusted by how thoroughly despicable his past self truly was. Straightening his posture, he resolves to clear up all misunderstandings before his past self's terrible actions permanently ruin Diane's life. A stern-faced servant approaches the imposing knight, formally addressing him as Lord Vandir. Justin confirms his identity with a curt nod as the servant formally announces that Lord Talleyrand ordered him to act as his guide. The servant gestures politely down the ornate hallway, instructing the commander to follow him. Reaching a set of large wooden doors, the servant knocks firmly and announces Lord Justin Devandia's arrival before excusing himself. From inside the room, a deep, authoritative voice commands him to come in. Justin steps into the room and immediately introduces himself, deeply expressing his gratitude for the Margrave taking precious time to see him. He falls completely silent, acutely aware of the incredibly stern, hostile glares directed at him by the armed guards lining the walls. Inwardly sweating, he questions just how dangerous they actually consider him since the Margrave brought his entire knightly guard into a mere office meeting. The Margrave stares coldly at the infamous commander, gesturing toward a small chair and firmly ordering him to have a seat. Justin eagerly accepts the offer with a crisp, polite thank you, fully aware his respectful demeanor is highly uncharacteristic. The Margrave narrows his eyes, silently observing the notorious noble with deep, underlying suspicion. Sitting down, Justin internally chuckles, knowing his polite behavior will completely shock men who previously viewed him and his squad as useless, talentless brutes. Leaning slightly forward, the Margrave bluntly asks the commander to state the urgent business that brought him to the manor. Justin maintains his composure under the Margrave's guarded stare, explaining that he discovered a serious issue during a recent town outing and came to report it. The Margrave crosses his arms, intrigued but skeptical, and asks him to elaborate on this supposed issue plaguing his land. Justin solemnly states that the public order has been blatantly worsening lately, which appears to be directly connected to the core issue. He bluntly informs the Margrave that the townspeople currently view him as a cruel lord who treats his own people as disposable pawns. The Margrave's eyes widen in sheer, unadulterated shock as he demands the commander repeat what he just said. A furious knight named Clement instantly draws his sword and screams at Justin for speaking so impudently, but the Margrave quickly raises a hand to silence his guard and orders Justin to continue. Undeterred by the threat, Justin questions the Margrave's policy regarding conscripted civilians who suffer permanent, debilitating injuries while fighting monsters. The Margrave defensively explains that directly employed soldiers receive military compensation, while conscripted militia members are simply excused from duty to resume their former jobs. Justin leans forward respectfully but firmly, pointing out that abandoning severely injured militia members is practically identical to treating them as disposable pawns. The Margrave gasps in shock as Justin recounts meeting a former craftsman whose severe conscription injuries permanently ruined his life and left his family starving. Justin explains that the injured man fell into bitter despair while his desperate wife ruined her own health trying to work in his place, forcing their children to beg for medicine. Revealing that he personally bought the medicine to temporarily help the family, Justin sternly argues that forcing conscription and then abandoning the injured perfectly justifies the people's cruel opinion of the Margrave. The Margrave heavily sighs, arguing that providing endless pensions to every injured civilian is completely unrealistic and would bankrupt the entire land. Justin calmly suggests an alternative, proposing the Margrave create specialized jobs for the injured and set up free clinics in the slums to provide realistic salvation. The Margrave suspiciously questions if Justin has any personal hidden motives, but the commander firmly denies it, stating the merit lies entirely with the people and the Margrave himself. Nodding slowly in deep understanding, the Margrave promises to develop ways to address the severe issue post-haste. Justin bows his head respectfully, sincerely thanking the Margrave for taking the time to carefully consider his humble ideas. The Margrave coldly notes that he is perfectly willing to listen to anyone, provided their arguments are entirely logical. However, a dark shadow crosses the Margrave's face as he openly admits he still fundamentally fails to understand Justin's true character. He bluntly states he cannot believe such a notoriously deceitful man would offer help without a fishy catch, especially considering the terrible way he has been treating his daughter. Justin immediately recognizes the dangerous shift in conversation and smoothly attempts to address the Margrave's primary concern. Staring directly into the Margrave's eyes, Justin solemnly swears on his family's name that he will absolutely never interact with Miss Diane ever again. The Margrave glares coldly at the commander, gruffly stating that it would be truly great if he could actually keep that grand vow. Justin internally sighs, fully accepting that the Margrave completely distrusts him, but resolving to accept the harsh reality of his stolen reputation. He grimly realizes that even if he successfully saves Diane by leaving her alone, it won't change the fact that the true main heroine will inevitably appear soon. He recalls the original plot, noting that a pure saint destined to combat the world's wickedness is slated to reveal herself. In the original novel, the Crown Prince easily married the saint without any obstacles simply because Diane had already tragically killed herself. Justin stares blankly ahead, genuinely hoping Diane can find true happiness while wondering how her survival will drastically alter the story's established timeline. Shifting the topic, Justin asks the Margrave if he has noticed the highly abnormal and concerning recent increase in monster attacks. He theorizes that the surge in monster activity is directly caused by the wicked god's influence, which serves as a massive sign that the true saint is about to appear. The Margrave violently slams his hands onto his desk, angrily shouting that even if the theory is true, there is absolutely no proof his daughter is the destined saint. Justin solemnly agrees, noting that it is highly likely Diane is not the actual saint, which makes the situation incredibly regrettable for her future. He presses the issue, asking the Margrave to consider what will happen to Diane if the true saint suddenly appears, given the historical precedent that all saints marry into the royal family. The Margrave stares in horrified silence as Justin bluntly points out that the Crown Prince will undoubtedly cast Diane aside without a second thought. Sweating profusely, the Margrave quietly agrees that his beloved daughter will be brutally forced to step aside and remain completely silent. Having successfully planted the seed of doubt, Justin gracefully pulls back, casually stating that everything he just said is merely harmless conjecture at this point. He calmly bows his head, explaining that he simply wanted the Margrave to be fully aware of the highly dangerous potential situation. The Margrave narrows his eyes in profound suspicion, outright demanding to know what secret scheme Justin is secretly plotting. Justin offers a surprisingly genuine, sorrowful look, insisting he has no hidden motives and merely deeply regrets his past misdeeds while asking for forgiveness for his impudent behavior. Preparing to leave, Justin states he fully understands his mere words won't earn any trust, so he promises to definitively prove his sincerity through his future actions instead. The Margrave sits alone in utter silence, still reeling from the incredibly intense and confusing conversation. Staring at the closed wooden door, the deeply conflicted Margrave questions if the polite, intelligent man who just left was truly the notorious villain Vandir. Stepping confidently out of the grand manor into the bright sunlight, Justin smiles slightly, feeling he has successfully taken his first major step toward a better future. Standing in the bustling kitchen, Justin expertly explains that laurel leaves add fragrance to stews, rosemary pairs with meat, and thyme kills fishy smells. The head chef stares in wide-eyed amazement, confessing he never knew medicinal herbs could be utilized for everyday cooking. Keeping his past life as a family cook a secret, Justin smoothly lies that he learned these culinary tricks while researching the practical effects of medicinal herbs. The kitchen doors swing open as Aurel steps inside and respectfully greets his commander. Aurel reports that the entire order has formally consented to a monthly food tax of 2 silver coins per person. Justin calculates the total to be around 1 gold coin, deciding they can successfully make do with that somewhat unreliable budget. To prevent any logistical hassle, he orders an administrative officer to handle the physical shopping using a list prepared by the cooks. He pragmatically notes that trusting a regular soldier with a large sum of money might tempt them into embezzlement, which would result in a brutal beating. Aurel completely agrees, suggesting they send an official order member alongside the administrator to deflect any lingering suspicions. Justin adds that this designated escort should be as intimidating as possible to prevent greedy merchants from overcharging them. Assuming the commander means a standard bodyguard, Aurel formally leaves the final personnel selection up to him. Pausing thoughtfully, Aurel suddenly realizes that Justin himself is actually the most suitable candidate for the job. A bead of sweat drips down Justin's face as he nervously asks if he was chosen solely for his notoriously terrifying appearance, which Aurel frantically denies. Aurel logically argues that the commander possesses extensive product knowledge and poses zero risk of embezzling the unit's funds. He smoothly concludes that local merchants will undoubtedly conduct honest transactions if the famous commander personally oversees the purchases. Justin falls into a deep, calculating silence as he weighs the undeniable logic of his vice commander's argument. Realizing he has been completely outmaneuvered, Justin bows his head with a heavy, defeated sigh. Conceding the argument, he firmly agrees to go on the shopping expedition himself. Aurel swiftly volunteers to cover the grueling forest patrol, eagerly suggesting Justin handle the lighter town patrol while he shops. Staring at his remarkably efficient subordinate, Justin smirks and asks if Aurel truly wants to eat delicious food that badly. Realizing Aurel brilliantly manipulated him into negotiating for better prices, Justin chuckles and orders him to summon the administrative officer. Aurel salutes sharply while the elated head chef immediately begins drafting a comprehensive list of necessary ingredients. Later that day, Justin casually patrols the sunlit cobblestone streets flanked by 3 of his armored subordinates. A knight named Simon lazily stretches his arms, cheerfully celebrating their easy walk before a comrade sharply reminds him it is an official patrol. Justin glares over his shoulder, sternly ordering Simon, Gaspard, and Arnor to stop messing around and maintain their knightly dignity. The three chastised soldiers immediately snap to attention, barking out a unified, terrified affirmative. Trailing slightly behind, the men begin whispering amongst themselves about the commander's bizarre and uncharacteristic behavior. They grumble that a man who previously encouraged violently beating disrespectful civilians has no right to suddenly preach about knightly dignity. Ignoring the mystery, an eager knight practically drools as he assumes tonight's dinner will drastically improve thanks to their shopping trip. Another knight scoffs at his optimism, pointing out that Justin wouldn't have brought an administrative officer if this was merely a fun excursion. Pushing past his friends, an overly excited knight urges the commander to hurry up, prompting the others to frantically tell him to calm down. Arriving outside a familiar pharmacy, Justin asks an administrative officer named Florent if he is personally acquainted with the shop owner. Florent confirms the supplier connection, so Justin hands over the chef's list and officially delegates the business negotiations to him. A sudden, cheerful voice shouting "Big Brother" cuts through the street noise, catching Justin's immediate attention. He turns to see Chloe and Mark, the destitute children he recently saved, running toward him with massive, beaming smiles. Justin greets the siblings warmly, gently asking if the two of them are out enjoying a casual stroll. Mark cheerfully explains that their recovering mother allowed their older brother to stay home with them, leaving Florent utterly confused by the commander's new acquaintances. Justin casually explains they met under complex circumstances, while the kids enthusiastically credit him for their father's renewed kindness and hard work. A soft, genuinely relieved smile graces Justin's scarred face as he expresses his profound happiness at the family's recovery. He gently rests his large hand on the beaming boy's head, silently grateful that his actions successfully rewrote their tragic destiny. The knights watch in utter disbelief as their notoriously cruel commander gently pats a child's head while smiling warmly. Misinterpreting the wholesome interaction, passing townsfolk whisper in horror, assuming he is violently threatening the innocent children. Justin sighs inwardly upon hearing the fearful gossip, grimly accepting that his terrible reputation perfectly justifies their terrified reactions. Excusing himself from the children, Justin apologizes that he has to work but promises to bring them a souvenir next time. The siblings beam with pure joy, eagerly confirming the promise with enthusiastic shouts. Waving excitedly, the children cheerfully bid their big brother farewell as they finally part ways. Watching from a distance, the stunned knights marvel at how deeply attached the children are to their commander. Justin's head slowly turns toward his eavesdropping subordinates, his neck cracking ominously as his friendly demeanor completely vanishes. The knights shriek in pure terror as he glares menacingly at them and harshly orders them to forget everything they just saw. Ignoring their panic, a knight teasingly asks if their fearsome leader is actually embarrassed, prompting Justin to furiously deny it. Justin violently blushes while silently lamenting how incredibly humiliating it is to be called Big Brother by grown men after maintaining such a villainous reputation. Desperately changing the subject, he barks an order for Florent to follow him, prompting a swift and terrified salute. Turning back to the remaining knights, he fiercely commands them to wait quietly and explicitly forbids them from picking fights with innocent passers-by. The pharmacy door jingles cheerfully as the towering knight steps confidently into the quiet establishment. Announcing his arrival, Justin accidentally terrifies the poor shopkeeper who stammers out the notorious commander's name in pure panic. Justin calmly delegates the actual transaction to Florent, allowing the administrative officer to step forward and handle the frightened merchant. Trying to ease the tension, Justin casually tells the trembling owner not to be so frightened since they are only there to shop. Florent presents a detailed list to the merchant, explaining they need some additional items delivered directly to the knight's barracks. Reviewing the request, the merchant notes the large order of medicinal herbs and assumes they should be delivered to the infirmary. Stepping forward, Justin firmly corrects the shopkeeper, instructing him to send the entire shipment directly to the kitchen instead. The merchant stares in utter confusion as Justin calmly explains he is testing a new way to use the herbs and plans to place continuous orders. Leaning in closer, the imposing knight adds a subtly menacing condition, noting that future purchases completely depend on the merchant doing a good job. The terrified shopkeeper vigorously promises to meet their expectations while Justin coldly asks if he can truly be counted on. A heavy, suffocating silence fills the room as the massive commander fiercely glares down at the trembling man. Watching through the window, the idling knights assume Justin is violently intimidating the poor owner to secure a lower price. The gossiping soldiers nod in agreement, relieved to finally see the familiar, tyrannical behavior they expect from their cruel commander. However, one knight points out how incredibly strange Justin has been acting ever since his recent injury, specifically noting his bizarrely wholesome interaction with the kids. Simon dramatically contorts his face into an evil grin, mimicking Justin's usual villainous laugh while questioning what possessed him to smile so kindly. The other knights struggle to hold back their laughter as they watch Simon perfectly imitate their terrifying captain. Suddenly, Justin's deep voice echoes from right behind them, calmly asking Simon to show him this supposed kindly smile. Simon practically jumps out of his armor, sweating profusely as he nervously stammers that it was all just a harmless joke. Unfazed by the panic, Justin smoothly decides he might as well play along with their childish games once in a while. A resounding smack echoes through the street as Justin casually clobbers Simon directly on top of the head. Rather than screaming in agony, Simon holds his head in utter confusion, completely bewildered by how incredibly gentle the strike was compared to their usual beatings. As Justin returns to the group, Florent proudly announces that he managed to secure all the required items at a significantly cheaper rate. When the knights assume the discount came from intimidation, Justin quickly clarifies that the lower price was simply the result of promising regular, bulk purchases. Justin internally acknowledges that such a favorable negotiation was only possible because the merchant was utterly terrified of his villainous persona. Staring determinedly ahead, the reincarnated commander resolves to use every ethical advantage at his disposal, knowing that managing finances for such a massive squad is incredibly tough. An excited knight excitedly rubs his stomach, comparing Justin's practicality to Cassius while drooling over the prospect of a delicious dinner. Shattering their joyful mood, Justin sternly reminds them that they must complete their grueling afternoon training before anyone gets to eat. Approaching the military encampment, Justin suddenly pauses as a strange commotion catches his attention. Gazing toward the chaotic entrance, he wonders why it is so incredibly noisy in front of the barracks. A frantic knight immediately spots the commander, prompting Justin to sharply demand what happened. The panicked soldier screams that the vice-commander's squad was ambushed during a fierce battle with monsters. Without wasting a single second, Justin sprints toward the gathered crowd with blazing speed. Shoving his way through the desperate soldiers, he loudly demands to know if everyone is all right. A grim scene of battered and blooded knights unfolds before his widened eyes. Stunned by the carnage, Justin urgently asks for a damage report just as a medic acknowledges his return. The exhausted medic welcomes him back, gratefully reporting that while everyone suffered injuries, there are no fatalities. Breathing a heavy sigh of relief, Justin quietly mutters that it is incredibly good news. Finding a heavily bandaged Aurel, Justin orders him to stay seated while the vice-commander bitterly apologizes for his pathetic state. Coughing weakly, Aurel explains that he led a patrol squad into the eastern forest shortly after Justin left. He reveals they were immediately ambushed by an overwhelming swarm of monsters far exceeding their expectations in the high-risk zone. Admitting they barely managed to survive the massacre, Aurel hangs his head as Justin solemnly praises him for returning alive. Clenching his fist, the wounded vice-commander points out the strange monster activity and begins to suggest a terrifying possibility. Cutting him off, Justin firmly orders Aurel to rest and promises to personally look into the escalating threat. Pivoting sharply on his heel, Justin commands Florent to dispatch an urgent messenger to the Margrave immediately. He orders the messenger to explicitly warn the Margrave about signs of a monster stampede and formally request military cooperation. Recalling the original novel, Justin remembers that his arrogant past self foolishly attempted to suppress this exact stampede using only the Third Night Order. That past arrogance led his insufficient forces into an utter bloodbath, resulting in massive casualties starting with Aurel's tragic death. Although the stampede was eventually crushed, the Order's ruined reputation allowed the hostile Crown Prince to install a treacherous new vice-commander to completely destroy Justin. Staring intensely at the bustling camp, he realizes this exact moment is the crucial turning point to permanently alter his doomed future. A cloud of dust kicks up at the gate as a heavy carriage and armed riders suddenly storm into the military camp. An administrative officer nervously interrupts Justin's intense plotting to announce the sudden arrivals. The officer quickly reports that Lord Clement, the fiercely loyal knight commander of the Margrave's domain, has officially arrived. Stepping forward politely, Justin attempts to thank the furious knight for traveling all this way. Completely ignoring the formal greeting, Clement aggressively stomps toward the commander with sheer, unadulterated rage burning in his eyes. Spitting with fury, Clement accuses Justin of playing a sick prank, outraged that his promised sincerity resulted in fake warnings about a monster stampede. The enraged knight violently questions if Justin is maliciously attempting to freely use their soldiers under the guise of this utter nonsense. Remaining completely calm under the verbal assault, Justin firmly explains that his own elite squad was just severely injured and routed in the eastern forest. Clement's furious expression shatters into pure shock as he struggles to comprehend that even the elite Third Night Order was violently repelled. Ignoring the knight's disbelief, Justin grimly reveals that the overwhelming monster forces are actively mobilizing in highly organized packs. Recognizing that Clement respects their raw strength despite hating them, Justin emphasizes just how terrifyingly abnormal this level of monster activity truly is. Acknowledging that a stampede hasn't occurred in over a century, Justin insists the current events perfectly match historical literature. He challenges the arrogant knight's complacency, warning that a century of peace offers absolutely no guarantee for tomorrow's survival. Shifting into full command mode, Justin orders them to immediately begin urgent inspections and critical repairs on the city walls. He dictates a parallel strategy to rapidly reorganize their defensive forces and deploy them in seamless cooperation with the Third Night Order. Overwhelmed by the massive strategic overhaul, an outraged Clement demands to know what responsibility Justin will take if the impending attack never actually happens. Justin tilts his head slightly, repeating the word responsibility with a cold, almost mocking edge to his calm voice. He ruthlessly shuts down the complaint by stating he is merely preparing for the absolute worst-case scenario, adding that a truly historically versed Margrave would never dare underestimate a monster stampede. Justin grumbles that both repairing the city walls and deploying soldiers as training will ultimately benefit the Margrave's domain. Clement completely ignores the logical argument, angrily ordering Justin to strictly refrain from overstepping his authority until the Lord officially replies. Turning sharply on his heel, the enraged knight abruptly excuses himself and storms out of the encampment. Watching him leave, Justin sighs in exasperation at the knight's blatantly open hostility. He grimly acknowledges that the Third Night Order will have to face the impending disaster by themselves. Later, Justin steps into the infirmary and casually asks his battered subordinates how they are doing. The injured knights practically jump out of their beds in sheer terror upon spotting their notoriously strict commander. Getting straight to business, Justin asks a medic to detail the exact condition of the injured and determine how many days of rest they require. The medic reports that most will recover after a few days, but the severely injured individuals will require more than a week of dedicated medical treatment. Justin silently processes the grim assessment, his intense gaze sweeping over the wounded men. Breaking the heavy tension, he gently orders the men to stay quiet and get some good rest after working so hard. He then turns to the medic, trusting him to properly look after his recovering subordinates. The medic bows his head and confidently accepts the heavy responsibility. Moving deeper into the room, Justin approaches Aurel to check on his specific condition. Aurel quickly attempts to sit up, claiming his injuries were shallow and he is already feeling completely fine. Bowing his head, the vice commander admits he fully expected to be harshly scolded and called pathetic by his ruthless leader. Justin cuts directly to the point, bypassing any unnecessary reprimands to focus on the looming threat. He confirms Aurel's worst fears, stating that a massive monster stampede will likely occur within the next few days. Aurel laughs nervously, finding it hard to believe he is about to face a legendary disaster that only occurs in cycles of several hundred years. Shifting the topic, Justin smoothly informs his vice commander that all the injured men have been granted a full week of rest. He explicitly clarifies that this mandatory resting period absolutely includes Aurel himself. Before Aurel can protest, Justin smirks and warns him not to misunderstand, clarifying that the rest is purely physical while his brain will be put to immediate work. Revealing that scouts have already been deployed, Justin assigns Aurel the crucial task of analyzing their incoming reports to predict the monster's movements for their upcoming operations. Realizing his commander has a clever plan up his sleeve, Aurel eagerly accepts the strategic role as Justin notes things are about to get incredibly busy. Standing before his gathered men, Justin confidently announces he will now explain the dire situation. He reveals that the monster's recent abnormal behavior is a confirmed precursor to a legendary monster stampede, utterly shocking his skeptical subordinates. Scanning the tense room, he asks if anyone knows exactly why these catastrophic monster rampages occur in the first place. Explaining the ancient lore, he describes a demonic stone called the fragment of the evil god that absorbs ambient dark energy until it reaches absolute saturation. He grimly adds that this saturated stone violently expels its energy, attracting massive hordes and creating new beasts until a full rampage erupts. Justin poses a tactical question to Aurel, noting they can either destroy the root demonic stone beforehand or endlessly fight the rampaging horde. Aurel solemnly answers that fighting the endless horde is generally their only option since there are almost no recorded instances of anyone successfully destroying a demonic stone. Justin completely agrees, clarifying that the extreme difficulty stems entirely from how incredibly hard it is to actually find the fragment of the evil god. He elaborates that before emitting its dark aura, the fragment looks like a perfectly normal rock that only a saint or high-ranking cleric could possibly identify. He severely warns that if they allow the rampage to fully begin, the sheer numbers will inflict catastrophic damage far beyond what the Third Night Order and the Margrave can handle. Smirking confidently, Justin completely rejects the conventional approach and declares they will launch a preemptive strike to destroy the stone while the monsters are still gathering. He reveals his deployed scouts already confirmed a massive monster gathering at the ruins of an eastern forest temple, perfectly pinpointing their target. A subordinate practically glows with admiration, praising the commander's spot-on intuition while Justin humbly attributes the discovery to sheer good fortune. Internally, Justin chuckles at the misplaced praise, knowing his supposed intuition actually comes from remembering the original novel where the saint found the stone in those exact ruins. Eager to become a legendary hero in the history books, Cassius practically jumps out of his boots and begs to join the strike force. Smiling at the young knight's fiery motivation, Justin smoothly grants his eager subordinates wish to join the dangerous assault. Snapping his fingers for emphasis, Justin officially declares that his own elite unit alongside Elliot's squad will spearhead the search and destroy mission. Evaluating his chosen forces, Justin praises Elliot's rapidly strengthening unit and confidently notes that their 2 squires are highly reliable. He internally smirks, realizing that adding the fiercely motivated Cassius into this volatile mix will make the impending battle incredibly interesting. Stepping away from the strategic war table, Justin announces he must immediately head out to formally meet with the Margrave. Before leaving, he orders the men to receive their final deployment instructions directly from Auriel and stand by for the imminent strike. Navigating the grand halls of the manor, Justin steps confidently into the Margrave's private office. The Margrave apologizes for the sudden summons, but Justin smoothly intercepts the pleasantries by announcing he also brought an urgent report. Justin confirms the Lord's worst fears, officially verifying that the clear precursor phenomena for the catastrophic monster stampede have actively begun. The Margrave closes his eyes in grim resignation, heavily lamenting that this legendary disaster has tragically fallen upon his generation. Staring firmly at the commander, the Margrave bluntly declares that he absolutely cannot spare any additional troops for the impending war. Justin silently processes the harsh refusal, briefly wondering if the Margrave's deep-rooted distrust is influencing his tactical decision. However, the Margrave quickly clarifies that simply increasing their troop numbers slightly won't do anything to stop an endless horde. Realizing they actually share the exact same tactical mindset, Justin smiles and notes their mutual understanding of the dire situation. Justin firmly declares his core strategy, arguing that the only way to survive is to completely eradicate the monster rampage at its root cause. The Margrave gasps in sheer, unadulterated shock as Justin confidently reveals he has already identified the exact location of the demonic stone. Clenching his fists, the Margrave passionately explains that the horrific stampedes have repeatedly devastated this specific region long before his family ever governed it. He leans forward with burning, desperate hope, realizing that successfully destroying the fragment of the evil god would finally fulfill his land's long-cherished wish. Regaining his authoritative composure, the Margrave earnestly asks if Lord Vandir has a concrete, actionable plan to achieve this impossible feat. Justin outlines his bold strategy, explaining that the currently gathering monsters present the perfect opportunity for a rapid, elite surprise attack. Shocking the Lord even further, Justin announces he will personally lead a suicide squad to break enemy lines while entrusting the vital rear guard to Auriel. The Margrave stares at the towering commander in total silence, profoundly moved by his utterly fearless dedication and brilliant tactical foresight. Bowing his head in profound respect, the Margrave formally requests Justin's cooperation, viewing the elite Third Night Order as their greatest hope. Justin maintains a highly pragmatic demeanor, warning that he cannot irresponsibly guarantee victory since they haven't physically uncovered the demonic stone yet. Placing a firm hand over his heart, the reincarnated commander solemnly promises to do his absolute best to save the doomed domain. Margrave Talleyrand firmly assures Lord Vandir that they will devote all their efforts to repairing and guarding the city walls. Clement gruffly agrees with the strategy, acknowledging the terrifyingly frequent increase in monster appearances. Fixing his stern gaze on the commander, the Margrave bluntly admits he still does not fully trust him. He challenges Lord Vandir to prove his newfound righteousness through concrete results rather than empty words. Bowing respectfully, Justin confidently accepts the challenge while internally resolving to exceed their harsh expectations. Promising he has no ill intent, Justin excuses himself to make final preparations while Clement glares suspiciously at his retreating back. Arriving back at the bustling barracks, Justin is warmly greeted by his men and immediately asks for Auriel's whereabouts. Stepping into the war room, Justin proudly informs an anxious Auriel that the Margrave's forces have officially agreed to secure the city walls. Breathing a massive sigh of relief, Auriel admits they could never have managed the looming crisis entirely on their own. Shifting focus to the impending battle, Justin asks about the squad's condition while observing them meticulously checking their gear. Auriel reports that squad morale is almost problematically high, prompting Justin to chuckle and declare high spirits a massive advantage. Leaning heavily over the tactical map, Justin shifts his intense focus to the latest battlefield intelligence. Auriel swiftly reports that the forward scouts have just returned from the target ruins with critical information. He grimly details a massive horde of nearly 50 monsters, including giant birds and ogres, swarming the ancient perimeter. Justin smirks confidently, deducing that the demonic stone is definitely hidden deep inside the ruins just as he predicted. Analyzing the heavy enemy presence, Auriel notes they must brutally clear the surrounding area before attempting to breach the ruins. Tapping the map with absolute authority, Justin solidifies his tactical assault plan in total silence. Breaking the tension, he firmly agrees with the frontal assault strategy and orders the plan into immediate effect. Realizing the barracks inventory is dangerously low, Justin orders Auriel to arrange for supplementary combat supplies immediately. A frantic shout echoes from the hallway as the head chef urgently searches for the commander. Bursting into the room, the chef announces the combat rations are fully prepared and requests Justin's magic bag for storage. Nodding in understanding, Justin immediately prepares to secure the crucial provisions. Excusing himself from the war room, Justin tells Auriel to continue the preparations while he handles the logistics. Standing in the bustling kitchen, Justin seamlessly absorbs massive crates of fresh food into his magical storage pouch. The proud chef explains he packed piping hot soups and sandwiches, relying on the magic bag's time delay effect to keep them fresh. Genuinely impressed by the staggering 120 perfectly prepared servings, Justin deeply praises the chef's rapid dedication. He boldly promises to return victorious before they can even finish the food, declaring the leftovers will serve as celebration snacks. Staring fiercely into the chef's eyes, Justin proclaims that the entire kitchen staff is fighting alongside them and their strength won't be wasted. Overwhelmed by the profound respect from his previously tyrannical commander, the chef stares back with tear-filled eyes. Clenching his fists with burning resolve, the chef screams that they will have the victory celebration ready for their triumphant return. A genuinely warm smile breaks across Justin's scarred face as he graciously accepts the promise. Turning his back to the cheering kitchen staff, the towering knight strides out to meet his awaiting army. Stepping out into the sprawling courtyard, Justin is immediately informed that all combat carriages are fully loaded and secured. The elite assault forces roar their readiness as both Justin's and Elliot's squads lock into strict military formation. Commanding absolute silence with a single raised hand, Justin prepares to run through the master tactical plan one final time. He details a swift carriage transport followed by a brutal ground assault, ordering his men to slaughter the monsters while rapidly advancing on the ruins. The support unit is commanded to secure all retreat routes while the vanguard focuses entirely on hunting down the demonic stone. Staring out over his loyal men, Justin coldly warns that there is absolutely no guarantee of survival and offers total amnesty to anyone who wishes to withdraw. Not a single knight breaks formation, their silent, unyielding stances proving their absolute loyalty to the impending bloodbath. Acknowledging their fierce bravery with a proud nod, Justin formally accepts their undying commitment. He grimly reminds them that failure means the entire Margrave's domain will be utterly swallowed by an unstoppable tide of monsters. Drawing his massive blade with a metallic shriek, Justin roars at his men to ignite their fighting spirits and destroy the fragment of the evil god. The courtyard erupts into a deafening war cry as Justin screams the order to officially commence the lethal operation. Heavily armored carriages thunder out of the military gates, kicking up massive clouds of dust as they charge toward the frontier. Plunging into the dark, oppressive tree line, the night convoy steadily navigates the treacherous forest path. Dismounting their transports, the vanguard draws their weapons and pushes silently through the increasingly dense underbrush. The ancient, crumbling stone arches of the targeted temple finally loom through the creeping forest fog. Peering through the dense foliage, a tense knight whispers aloud, questioning if they have finally found the sinister ruins. An absolutely terrifying sea of grotesque monsters swarms endlessly around the decaying temple steps. Cassius shudders with pure adrenaline as he spots towering ogres, massive rocks, and vicious two-headed wolves mixed into the horrifying horde. Analyzing the perimeter, Justin deduces that the ancient temple's lingering divine protection is actively preventing the lower-ranking beasts from entering. He grimly realizes this means any monster capable of crossing the threshold into the ruins will be an unimaginably lethal opponent. Justin pragmatically announces that the true nightmare begins inside the temple, boldly suggesting they slaughter the exterior horde quickly so they can enjoy their promised meal. Cracking his knuckles with a wicked grin, Cassius screams his eagerness to fight while his comrades match his bloodthirsty enthusiasm. Chuckling darkly at his squad's terrifying bloodlust, Justin unsheathes his blade and orders the devastating vanguard assault to begin. The vanguard fiercely charges into the dark ruins, weapons drawn and ready for absolute slaughter. A deafening roar echoes through the cursed temple as the knights violently clash with the terrifying monster horde. Heavy blades shatter bone and scales as the elite forces ruthlessly cut down the initial wave of beasts. Arrows rain down from the blood-stained sky, piercing the darkness with absolute, deadly precision. A knight wildly cheers his success as his precision strike flawlessly hits its intended target. Flashing back to the tactical meeting, Justin analyzes the troublesome flying monsters and notes that heavy ballistas cannot be transported across the rough terrain. He completely rejects explosive magic due to the severe risk of forest fires, while acknowledging that standard crossbows entirely lack the necessary range. Aurel suggests wind magic enchantments, but Justin counters with a plan to use specialized piercing arrows since they lack wind attribute stones. Justin smirks at his vice commander's ruthless pragmatism, confidently noting that the Margrave will gladly loosen his emergency purse strings for such an operation. Snapping back to the chaotic present, the battlefield erupts into an absolute, unyielding bloodbath. Justin barks authoritative orders, commanding the support unit to clear the perimeter while the main force targets the massive beasts. Drawing his towering blade, he directs his personal squad to immediately crush a colossal magic bear rampaging through their lines. Elliot's squad pushes forward to suppress the swarming horde while Justin boldly prepares to draw the aggro of the largest threats. The giant magic bear roars furiously, locking its glowing eyes directly onto the advancing elite knights. Simon eagerly claims the first strike, screaming for Arnor to follow his lead and violently beat the monster down. Roaring a fierce battle cry, Simon launches himself directly at the towering beast. His blade violently bounces off the creature's unnaturally tough hide, leaving him completely shocked by its impenetrable defense. He barely dodges a lethal swipe, crying out in panic as the beast counters with terrifying speed. Justin quickly identifies the beast as a rare variant, barking a critical order for his men to target its vulnerable joints with stabbing attacks. Simon instantly adapts to the brilliant strategy, barking orders for Gaspard to flank while Marius fiercely maneuvers behind the beast. The knights scatter seamlessly into a flawless, lethal tactical formation. Working in perfect unison, they systematically overwhelm the beast's massive, lumbering defenses. Steel flashes brilliantly as they repeatedly strike at the monster's exposed joints. The infuriated bear thrashes wildly, desperately trying to crush its relentless attackers. A devastating, coordinated strike finally forces the colossal monster to stagger backward. Seizing the critical opening, Simon furiously commands Marius to trip the off-balance beast. Marius unleashes a guttural shout as he drives his weapon directly into the creature's massive leg. The giant bear completely loses its footing and crashes violently into the dirt. Arnor leaps high above the fallen beast, perfectly positioning himself for a brutal finishing blow. Smirking in absolute triumph, Arnor drives his blade straight into the monster's open jaws. He gleefully notes that the beast's impenetrable armor did not extend to the soft flesh inside its mouth. Justin warmly praises their flawless teamwork as they successfully eliminate their first major target. The celebration briefly derails as Arnor groans in disgust over his sticky hands, earning a swift reprimand from his unamused comrades. Justin ruthlessly shatters their relaxed mood, sternly warning them not to let their guard down while the horde still swarms. Noticing Elliot's squad being pushed back, the elite knights immediately pivot to reinforce their struggling allies. Justin praises Arnor's sharp battlefield judgment with a genuinely proud nod. Flashing a wickedly arrogant smirk, he challenges his men to work harder for their credit before he massacres the entire horde himself. The knights laugh nervously, deeply intimidated by their commander's monstrous, bloodthirsty confidence. Justin effortlessly cleaves through the remaining beasts, his massive sword painting the decaying ruins red. With the immediate perimeter secured, Aurel approaches his commander to ask if they should resume their critical search for the fragment of the evil god. Aurel asks if everything is settled, and Justin decides to take a short break while ordering them to inspect their equipment. The knights immediately begin checking their weapons and armor in the aftermath of the intense battle. Justin raises his hand and activates his magic by calmly saying deploy. Magical light engulfs the area as the hot food materializes, prompting the exhausted knights to cheer while Justin tells them to grab a quick bite. Reminding them to wash their hands at the nearby stream first, Justin's motherly tone earns a unified, eager response from his men. The knights joyfully devour the magical feast, while the chefs discuss deep-frying rock meat and making salt-fried chicken. Justin observes his men eating with a satisfied, quiet smirk. A subordinate reports that they cannot find anything resembling demonic stones in the vicinity, which exactly matches Justin's expectations. Justin orders the support unit to guard the entrance while declaring that his and Elliot's squads will delve deep into the ruins to handle the threat themselves. The men chuckle at their commander's reckless confidence as he proudly reminds them he has trained them enough to survive. Staring into the pitch-black entrance of the ruins, Justin asks his elite strike force if they are ready. Filled with motivation from the magical feast, the eager knights practically beg their commander to hurry up so they can finish the mission. Drawing his weapon with a confident smirk, Justin commands the vanguard to push forward into the darkness. The heavy, armored boots of the knights echo ominously as they march down the crumbling stone steps into the abyss. Immersed in the oppressive darkness, a knight suggests preparing torches to navigate the pitch-black hallway. Justin quickly dismisses the idea, warning that torches will be a massive hindrance if a battle suddenly breaks out. Raising his hand, Justin snaps his fingers and casually casts a light spell. Glowing orbs of magical light illuminate the corridor as the knights praise his convenient magic and line up to receive the enchantment. The elite vanguard steadily advances through the eerie, glowing ruins, their weapons drawn and ready. They encounter a massive, heavily reinforced double door blocking their path. Justin signals his men to halt as he intensely glares at the imposing gateway. Closing his eyes, Justin senses the overwhelming demonic energy and confirms their target lies just beyond the doors. The knights stare at the intricate, ancient carvings on the massive stone doors. Realizing the architecture resembles a chapel, a knight murmurs that it is the perfect hiding place for the demonic stone. Justin places his hand against the cold stone, ordering his men to wait a moment while he investigates. Peeking through a crack in the doors, Justin whispers bingo as he spots their ultimate target. He grimly reports that the fragment of the evil god is located further inside, surrounded by a massive horde of monsters. A knight assumes they will hold off the monsters while Justin uses body enhancement magic to charge the stone. Justin surprises everyone by pointing directly at Cassius, declaring that he will leave the destruction of the fragment entirely to the young knight. Explaining that his own magic has limits, Justin praises Cassius for being lightly equipped, strong, and the most agile fighter among them. Staring intensely at his shocked subordinate, Justin orders Cassius to prepare himself and refuses to take no for an answer. Cassius' eyes widen in sheer panic as the massive weight of the mission crashes down on him. Gulping nervously, the young knight silently steels his resolve under his commander's heavy expectations. Smiling warmly, Justin motions for the trembling Cassius to step forward. Justin firmly places his large hand on Cassius' shoulder. A brilliant flash of magical energy erupts as Justin casts a powerful body enhancement spell on the young knight. Cassius gasps in awe as the surging magical power courses violently through his veins. Flexing his glowing hands, Cassius marvels at how incredibly light and powerful his enhanced body feels. Justin quickly outlines the strategy, ordering the squad to distract the monsters and pinpoint the stone for Cassius the moment they breach the room. Gripping the massive door handles, Justin warns that the monsters will instantly notice the leaking light and signals the breach. He silently counts down from 3, his men bracing themselves for the impending bloodbath. With a deafening creak, Justin violently shoves the massive stone doors wide open. A terrifying horde of grotesque monsters instantly turns toward the invading knights. Drawing his colossal blade, Justin furiously commands his men to hurry and locate the fragment of the evil god. The elite vanguard charges fiercely into the chapel, clashing violently with the overwhelming monster swarm. Weapons shatter scales and bone as the knights frantically carve a bloody path through the chaotic horde. Yug excitedly spots the dark, jagged demonic stone floating atop an altar and frantically points it out to the commander. Praising Yug's sharp eyes, Justin screams for Cassius to launch his attack immediately. Roaring a fierce battle cry, Justin orders the entire squad to protect themselves and provide full support for Cassius' charge. Cassius explodes forward with terrifying speed, his magically enhanced body moving like a blur through the battlefield. He effortlessly leaps over a massive monster, utilizing his incredible agility to bypass the enemy front line. The desperate knights clash wildly with the swarming beasts, screaming for Cassius to hurry as the horde closes in. Simon heroically deflects a lethal strike meant for Cassius, earning a quick shout of gratitude as the young knight sprints past. Sprinting up the altar steps, Cassius grips his weapon tightly and prays he can successfully destroy the sinister artifact. Leaping high into the air, Cassius brings his blade crashing down onto the fragment of the evil god with devastating force. His eyes widen in absolute shock as his weapon violently bounces off the incredibly hard demonic stone without leaving a scratch. Cursing in frustration, he desperately winds up for another brutal strike. Below the altar, Justin fiercely decapitates a beast while keeping a watchful eye on his struggling subordinate. Cassius unleashes a relentless flurry of heavy blows, desperately trying to crack the impenetrable artifact. Sweating profusely, he screams for the damn thing to break quickly as his sword strikes the stone again and again. A massive, terrifying monster suddenly bursts from the shadows right behind the distracted young knight. Seeing the lethal danger, Justin screams for Cassius to abandon the stone and run for his life. Ignoring the warning, Cassius pours all his remaining strength into one final, desperate strike, gleefully shouting as the demonic stone finally shatters. The fragment of the evil god violently explodes into a shower of dark, jagged shards. An agonizing, otherworldly roar echoes through the ruins as the massive beast lunges directly at Cassius with its jaws wide open. A grand establishing shot reveals the sprawling, majestic architecture of the royal capital of the Kingdom of Laphios. Ominous footsteps echo down the grand, ornately decorated hallways of the royal palace. Diane stands solemnly by a massive window, her expression heavy with unvoiced sorrow and deep anxiety. Lord Ernest approaches her from behind, a gentle and reassuring smile gracing his royal features. He warmly greets Diane, noting that he had been searching for her throughout the estate. Noticing her pale complexion, Ernest gently asks if she is deeply troubled by her father's recent letter regarding the increasing monster threat in the Talaran territory. Diane expresses her profound gratitude for his support, while Ernest confidently assures her he has already dispatched a knight order to subjugate the vile threat. He proudly reveals that the subjugation force is actively led by the 3rd Knight Order commander, Justin de Vandir. Diane's heart completely sinks with dread, utterly terrified of how that notoriously cruel man might be treating her father and the innocent villagers. Flashing back to the chaotic ruins, Justin's eyes widen in absolute horror as a massive beast violently lunges toward Cassius. The terrifying monster snaps its colossal jaws shut, threatening to devour the young, paralyzed knight whole. Roaring with explosive fury, Justin fiercely commands the beast to keep its filthy hands off his subordinate. Surging forward with blinding speed, the towering commander launches a devastating, desperate counterattack. His massive blade violently carves through the monster's skull, shattering bone and jagged fangs in a shower of dark blood. Cassius stares up in breathless awe as his ruthless commander miraculously intercepts the lethal blow meant for him. Standing tall amidst the brutal carnage, Justin fiercely shields the young knight with his own imposing, armored body. The beast's severed head crashes heavily onto the cold stone floor, spraying thick blood across the ruined chapel. The colossal monster's lifeless body slumps violently onto the altar, completely neutralized by the singular, devastating strike. Breathing heavily, Justin glances over his broad shoulder to urgently check on his stunned subordinate. Cassius sits trembling on the blood-stained floor, completely overwhelmed by the sheer, terrifying intensity of the near-death experience. The young knight gazes up at his towering commander, his wide eyes shining with profound admiration and absolute relief. Stammering through his overwhelming shock, Cassius calls out his commander's title with newfound, unquestionable reverence. Justin exhales a shaky, exhausted breath, silently thanking the heavens that he actually managed to make it in time to save someone this time. Flashing a surprisingly proud and gentle smile, Justin warmly commends Cassius for a job exceptionally well done. Turning to the surviving knights, Justin loudly proclaims that Cassius showed immense spirit and successfully destroyed the fragment of the evil god. Pointing his blood-drenched sword at the remaining horde, he boldly declares that while the monsters won't simply vanish, the tide of battle has definitively turned. The massive beasts visibly cower and tremble in the shadows, completely stripped of their dark empowerment and utterly terrified of the elite knights. Roaring a deafening battle cry, Justin commands his blooded men to seize this perfect, golden tactical opportunity. The elite knights roar in thunderous agreement as Justin orders one final, devastating push to annihilate the remaining enemy forces. Fueled by pure adrenaline and soaring morale, the vanguard charges fearlessly forward into the retreating, panicked horde. A determined knight ruthlessly cleaves a monster in half, mercilessly pressing their overwhelming tactical advantage. The squad works in absolutely perfect unison, systematically slaughtering the terrified beasts with brutal, unapologetic efficiency. Meanwhile, at the ruins entrance, the support unit sighs in massive relief as the external monster attacks finally subside into silence. One guard nervously wonders if the vanguard will return safely, while his comrade confidently reminds him that the commander's elite unit is virtually unstoppable. Chuckling at the easygoing response, the guard pragmatically notes that they will all die anyway if the mission fails, simply hoping for a very quick return. Stepping out from the pitch-black ruins, Justin calmly praises the vigilant support unit for flawlessly defending the critical entrance. The perimeter guards erupt into pure, jubilant cheers as the blooded but entirely victorious vanguard emerges safely from the shadows. As a battered Cassius groans about his immense physical exhaustion, Aurel eagerly asks about the ultimate fate of the demonic stone. Reaching deep into his leather pouch, Justin presents the shattered remnants of the once terrifying artifact. He holds up a dull, jagged chunk of rock, proudly declaring it to be the permanently defeated fragment of the evil god. Justin confirms that the dark energy is completely drained from the shards, leaving behind nothing more than a simple, mundane stone. Acknowledging that their field report alone won't suffice, Justin plans to have a high-ranking cleric formally investigate the stone to properly corroborate their extraordinary victory. Shifting his intense, intimidating focus entirely away from the artifact, Justin sharply calls out to Cassius. He sternly scolds the young knight for being dangerously reckless, directly ordering him to prioritize his own life and regroup temporarily even if commanded otherwise. Cassius chuckles nervously while rubbing his head, honestly admitting he might have retreated if it were the cruel commander from a little while ago. Beaming with absolute, unshakable trust, Cassius proudly declares his total faith that the current commander would somehow manage to save him. Justin's stern, authoritative expression completely shatters into profound surprise, deeply moved by the young knight's unwavering loyalty. Stepping forcefully forward, Justin violently but affectionately ruffles the bewildered boy's messy hair. Laughing genuinely, Justin orders the young citizen to cherish his own life, playfully demanding he stop talking like such a selfless, responsible adult. Dropping his boisterous, public act, Justin offers a highly sincere, quiet apology for forcing Cassius into such a terrifyingly reckless situation. He stares directly into Cassius' eyes and firmly repeats that the young knight did an exceptionally, undeniably good job. Cassius blushes furiously under the praise, completely unable to wipe the massive, fiercely proud smile off his face. Aurel formally confirms the temple is totally secure with no hostile reinforcements approaching, prompting Justin to officially declare the highly dangerous operation over. Grinning wickedly at his exhausted but victorious men, Justin notes that there is only one natural, logical thing left to do now. He chuckles darkly as his blooded squad practically vibrates with overwhelming, ravenous anticipation. Throwing his massive arms wide open, Justin loudly and proudly proclaims that it is finally lunchtime. The exhausted elite knights erupt into deafening, ecstatic cheers, their battered morale instantly skyrocketing at the mere mention of food. Adopting a strict, almost motherly tone, Justin demands to know if everyone washed their hands in the stream, earning a thunderous, unified affirmative. With the vital hygiene check complete, Justin officially greenlights the feast as the starving men eagerly scramble for their magical rations. The battered, blooded soldiers happily gorge themselves on the piping hot, perfectly prepared sandwiches and meats. Sitting slightly apart from the chaotic celebration, Justin gazes thoughtfully into the dense, silent forest. The squires eagerly bite into their delicious rations, completely ignoring the lingering, foul stench of monster blood clinging to their armor. Justin silently reflects on the sheer impossibility of their massive victory, immensely relieved they actually survived the doomed, narrative scenario. His expression slowly darkens as he grimly contemplates the massive, unavoidable political hurdles that still lie ahead in the capital. He logically realizes this victory should win the Margrave's trust, but bitterly acknowledges the royal nobles still view him as the exact same evil, ruthless villain. Spiraling into dark paranoia, he worries a biased cleric might falsely testify the stone is fake, potentially getting him charged with inciting a massive, fake riot for personal fame. His intense, spiraling anxiety is suddenly shattered when a knight rudely yells across the camp, demanding to know why he is still making such a terrifying face. The men playfully complain that he should actually rejoice a little, teasingly threatening to eat all his delicious food if he doesn't stop brooding immediately. Justin glares sharply at his rowdy subordinates, but his previously terrifying, suffocating aura is completely absent. Letting out a long, incredibly heavy sigh, he forcibly pushes his paranoid political worries out of his mind. A genuinely warm, peaceful smile finally breaks completely through his scarred, heavily intimidating features. The eager knights hold out fresh, hot sandwiches, joyfully inviting their beloved commander to fully join the feast. Deciding that mere survival is enough of a victory for one day, he resolves to deal with the inevitable political fallout later. He simply decides to celebrate their safety and this massive step toward a good future, before jokingly threatening Simon for making that entirely unnecessary remark about his scary face. A victorious warrior raises his weapon before a hulking minotaur, triumphantly declaring that he has finally destroyed the fragment of the evil god. The commander's eyes suddenly narrow in shock as he senses an impending threat. A desperate, echoing scream demanding the violence to stop rings out through the vast arched halls. A panicked group of young boys cry out desperately for their big brother. Nearby soldiers also shout out for their commander in alarm. A sudden, haunting flashback reveals the silhouette of a child running desperately toward a waiting car. Back in the present, the monstrous minotaur raises its massive axe to strike down the lone human warrior. Cassius grits his teeth in immense frustration, bracing himself for the devastating incoming blow. The beast slams its weapon down with earth-shattering force as someone screams out for their little brother. Gripping his sword tightly, the commander furiously yells for the monster to keep its hands off. He roars a command at the beast, forbidding it from touching the fallen warrior. Two armored guards flinch in shock as the intense, high-speed battle unfolds before them. A pack of terrifying goblins and a giant, glowing-eyed wolf snarl menacingly at the human forces. The giant minotaur snorts with blinding rage, its eyes glowing fiercely in the dark. With incredible physical power, the beast swings its massive weapon down against the grand stone architecture. Suddenly, a blindingly fast slash tears right through the minotaur's flesh in a massive spray of blood. The monster roars in agonizing pain as the devastating sword attack connects. Sliced completely in half, the beast's severed upper body goes flying across the floor, leaving a gruesome trail of blood in its wake. The blonde-haired commander kneels on the ground, panting heavily as he clutches his freshly wounded arm. The two armored guards stare in absolute awe at the unbelievable display of martial power. One of the guards stammers out his commander's title in pure, trembling relief. Flashing a weary but triumphant smirk, the bleeding commander notes with relief that he finally made it in time. Giving a proud thumbs up, he praises Cassius for an excellent job well done. Looking at the shattered remnants of the glowing rock, the soldiers cheer that Cassius showed true spirit and destroyed the fragment of the evil god. A skeletal figure points out that while the fragment is gone, the remaining monsters won't simply disappear. However, he quickly notices that the terrifying beasts are now cowering and trembling in fear of the human victors. Seizing the golden opportunity, the commander draws his sword and fiercely rallies his troops for a counterattack. Reinvigorated by the command, the guards charge forward with a battle cry, determined to annihilate the remaining enemies before them. The human soldiers swarm the grand hall in a unified strike, completely overwhelming the retreating monster horde. A brilliant, blinding light suddenly erupts from the grand arched doorway. Outside the crumbling stone ruins, a sense of eerie calm finally settles over the devastated battlefield. Guarding the shattered fragment, the rear soldiers express their relief that the monster attack has subsided and they could handle the scale of it themselves. One guard reassures his anxious comrade that the commander and his elite knight unit will return safely, despite the long passage of time. A cynical soldier remarks that failure just means death for everyone anyway, but admits he hopes the elite squad comes back soon. Suddenly, a familiar voice calls out from the shadows, praising the rear guards for successfully defending the entrance. The soldiers light up with absolute joy as they see their commander and the elite unit returning completely unharmed. Exhausted from the grueling ordeal, the commander asks about the fragment's status while groaning about how incredibly tired he is. With a heavy, echoing thud, he drops a mysterious object onto the stone ground. Gesturing to his newly acquired prize, the commander confidently announces that this is exactly what they were waiting for. He reveals the destroyed fragment, noting that all its demonic energy has vanished and left it as nothing more than an ordinary piece of stone. Examining the inert artifact, a soldier notes their report isn't enough and suggests a high-ranking cleric investigate to corroborate its authenticity. Shifting the focus entirely, the commander turns his intense gaze toward the young soldier and calls out his name. He firmly scolds the boy for being too reckless with his own life, insisting he should have temporarily retreated despite the orders. Chuckling softly, the young soldier admits he might have backed down if it were the ruthless commander from a little while ago. Flashing a bright smile, he declares his unwavering belief that the current commander would somehow manage to pull them through. A brief, stunned silence washes over the commander as the sheer weight of his subordinate's absolute trust sinks in. Overcome with sudden affection, the commander reaches out and aggressively roughhouses the startled boy by wildly tousling his hair. As the boy yelps and protests the treatment, the commander playfully chides him for talking like such a mature adult. Softening his demeanor, the commander sincerely apologizes for forcing the young warrior to take such a reckless gamble. Smiling warmly at his subordinate, he firmly repeats his praise and commends him for a job exceptionally well done. The young soldier lets out a soft gasp, visibly moved by the rare and genuine validation from his leader. A scout abruptly arrives to report that the temple interior is completely secure and no enemy reinforcements are approaching. Taking in the good news, the commander formally declares the dangerous operation over and hints at the natural next step. Noticing the eager anticipation radiating from the troops, a soldier chuckles and notes that they simply cannot endure the wait any longer. Throwing his arms wide open, the commander loudly and joyfully declares that it is finally time for lunch. The exhausted but victorious soldiers instantly erupt into massive, roaring cheers at the prospect of a hot meal. Acting like a stern parent, the commander playfully verifies that everyone washed their hands before the troops loudly confirm. With morale at an all-time high, the united squad heartily digs into their well-earned feast together. The hungry warriors eagerly devour their military rations, letting the warm food soothe their battered bodies. Laughter and lively chatter fill the air as the men bond over the shared triumph of their harrowing battle. Rich, steaming food is passed around the lively camp as the squad relishes a rare moment of absolute peace. Watching his men celebrate, the commander exhales a heavy sigh of sheer relief that they actually survived the brutal ordeal. A quiet moment of reflection washes over him as he silently contemplates the heavy burden of leadership and their recent victory. He optimistically notes to himself that successfully handling this major crisis should finally earn them the Margrave's crucial trust. However, dark anxiety creeps back in as he vividly imagines hostile clerics falsifying reports or capital nobles plotting his downfall. Spotting his intense brooding, a concerned soldier loudly asks why the commander is still making such a terrifying face during a celebration. While one soldier wishes he would just rejoice, Simon casually jokes that the terrifying scowl is simply the commander's normal face. The commander flinches visibly, caught entirely off guard by his subordinate's blunt and humorous observations. The troops burst into light-hearted laughter, completely oblivious to their leader's complex internal political anxieties. Annoyance flares up in the commander's eyes as he sharply glares at his men for ruining his serious moment. Despite his grumbling, the warm atmosphere of the raucous feast quickly melts away the lingering tension in the camp. Shaking off his spiraling anxiety, the commander decisively shelves his dark political thoughts for another day. Resolving to celebrate their survival, he smiles slightly but silently vows revenge on Simon for the unnecessary remark about his face. Miles away, the scene shifts dramatically to the grand, imposing architecture of the royal capital of the Kingdom of Raphios. Sharp footsteps echo ominously down a lavish, pristine corridor as a distinguished figure approaches a set of heavy doors. The regal atmosphere of the capital stands in stark, peaceful contrast to the bloody battlefield the knights just survived. Entering the room, Lord Ernest warmly greets Diane and expresses his relief at finally locating her. Noticing her pale complexion, Ernest asks what is troubling her, prompting Diane to reveal her father's grim report of increasing monster attacks. Ernest confidently reassures her that he already dispatched a night order for subjugation, but Diane's deep anxiety remains completely unsoothed. A dark, imposing mental image of the infamous Third Night Order commander Justin de Vendière flashes through her terrified mind. Trembling with sheer dread, Diane confesses her paralyzing fear over how that ruthless tyrant might be treating her father and the innocent villagers. Rhythmic clattering echoes down the sunlit cobblestone street as armored cavalry confidently approach the town. Bustling townspeople pause to watch as the triumphant returning soldiers ride steadily through the crowded city square. The heavily fortified gates of the local estate loom ahead as the seasoned subjugation party finally reaches its destination. Spotting the approaching riders, an eager guard immediately shouts out to the vice-captain that the subjugation party has returned. Exhausted but visibly relieved, the battered soldiers are warmly welcomed back by their cheering comrades. A weary soldier admits the battle was dangerously close, while Florent expresses immense gratitude for the captain's safe return. A hyperactive soldier loudly demands an immediate victory party, prompting the captain to dryly question his absurd energy levels. The captain swiftly shoots down the party idea, strictly ordering his tired men to rest while he reports directly to the Margrave. Barking sharp orders, he commands Florent to arrange an urgent meeting and ensure a high-ranking priest is in attendance. Florent respectfully agrees to handle the logistics while urging the tired captain to rest and change his gear. Inside the grand estate, a formal servant respectfully announces Lord Vendier's anticipated arrival to his master. Rising with a bright smile, the Margrave warmly congratulates the captain for successfully suppressing the monstrous threat. Bowing with uncharacteristic humility, the captain gracefully attributes their miraculous victory to the Margrave's vital support. The Margrave politely dismisses the formalities, gesturing for the night to sit so they can comfortably discuss urgent matters. Postponing any celebration, the Margrave curiously asks what pressing business requires the immediate presence of a priest. The captain's expression darkens with deadly seriousness as he quietly reaches into his leather pouch. A heavy thud echoes sharply through the lavish room as a mysterious wrapped object is placed onto the central table. Unveiling the dark rock, the captain calmly announces they retrieved a genuine fragment of the evil god from the Talleyrand territory. Explaining they destroyed the artifact to stop the monster spawns, he firmly requests the stunned priest appraise it personally. Trembling under the object's ominous residual mana, the sweating priest confirms its terrifying authenticity without hesitation. The Margrave nervously eyes the corrupted artifact and tensely asks if the area is finally safe. Staring intently at the dark relic, the deeply unnerved priest struggles to formulate a proper response. Regaining his composure, the priest strongly insists that the malevolent fragment requires immediate and thorough purification. The captain silently deduces that the Margrave is hesitating because multiple priests and a massive donation are required to purify such evil energy. Knowing the Margrave's finances are ruined by the stampede, the captain boldly asks to take personal custody of the evil fragment. He smoothly rationalizes that bringing hard evidence to His Majesty is critical for proving such an unprecedented and miraculous victory. Turning his sharp gaze to the priest, the captain casually requests official certification of the stone, catching the cleric completely off guard. Dangling a massive political incentive, the captain promises to highlight the priest's vital involvement when delivering the artifact to the Grand Temple. The priest's eyes widen dramatically as the sheer scope of the political opportunity dawns on him. Greed instantly overpowering his hesitation, the eager cleric happily agrees to provide the requested certification. The two men exchange polite pleasantries, perfectly sealing their mutually beneficial political bargain. The captain smugly notes internally that the priest's immense desire for royal fame easily outweighed his lost purification fees. Greatly relieved by the financial bailout, the Margrave quickly orders his butler to help the priest prepare the certificate in another room. The obedient butler silently bows and escorts the eager cleric out of the grand meeting chamber. A heavy wooden door clicks shut, completely isolating the captain and the Margrave in the quiet room. The captain bluntly states the royal family should cover purification costs, prompting a wry apology and deep thanks from the grateful lord. When asked about his unit's next move, the captain casually replies they will observe the area for a week before returning to the capital. Offering to deliver letters to the king or the Margrave's daughter, the captain is met with a deeply suspicious glare as the older man wonders what changed him. The Margrave silently studies the formerly ruthless commander, completely baffled by his sudden display of diplomacy and kindness. Deflecting the intense scrutiny with a gentle smile, the captain casually jokes that the local water and air must have simply agreed with him. Chuckling softly, the Margrave smiles to himself as he finalizes his political arrangements. Thanking Justin for his massive help, the Margrave promises his own soldiers will handle patrols so the elite knights can finally rest. Groans of sheer exhaustion ripple through the quiet barracks as the battered knights completely collapse into their beds. In the bustling estate kitchen, rhythmic chopping and the loud sizzle of hot pans shatter the quiet morning air. Surprised soldiers stare in pure disbelief as they stumble upon their imposing captain cheerfully cooking a gift in the kitchen. Noting his men's utterly shocked reactions to his rare grin, Justin dryly asks if his smiling face is really that strange. Spotting their desperately hungry expressions, Justin easily deduces that the ravenous troops want a share of his honey-loaded pancakes. Pausing his frantic cooking, the captain thoughtfully considers the eager, desperate demands of his starving men. Seizing the perfect motivational opportunity, Justin loudly announces that whoever performs best in tomorrow's final joint exercise will earn a special culinary reward. Heavy anticipation crackles fiercely through the air as the massive joint training ground is prepped for the upcoming brawls. Heavily armored knights tightly grip their wooden training swords as they aggressively face off under the bright morning sun. Boots scrape violently against the dry dirt as the rival military factions passionately stare each other down. Observing the unusually terrifying atmosphere, a local officer nervously notes that he ordered his men to hold absolutely nothing back today. Roaring across the dusty field, the referee officially begins the one-on-one mock battles and fiercely warns everyone not to let their guard down. Swallowing hard, the local knights silently realize the murderous intensity radiating from their elite opponents could easily get them killed. Barking a sharp command, the referee aggressively orders the very first pair of combatants to step boldly into the ring. Squaring off with lethal precision, the two fierce warriors lock eyes and perfectly mirror each other's combat stances. With a deafening, explosive shout, the referee officially kicks off the brutal match into high-speed motion. Lunging forward like a violently coiled spring, the Third Knight Order soldier instantly closes the massive gap. Stunned by the blinding speed, the Margrave's knight barely has a fraction of a second to react to the incoming assault. A heavy wooden blade violently crashes down, effortlessly shattering the local knight's hasty and desperate defense. Twisting his fierce momentum, the elite soldier smoothly pivots into a devastating, high-speed sweeping strike. The brutal backhand swing connects flawlessly, completely overwhelming and crushing the opponent's fragile guard. Knocked completely off balance by the explosive force, the local knight stumbles wildly across the dusty arena. Pressing his massive tactical advantage, the elite soldier mercilessly follows up with a blinding, unrelenting flurry of strikes. The absolutely relentless barrage of heavy physical blows forces the Margrave's battered knight straight to his knees. Towering dominantly over his defeated foe, the victorious elite knight holds his wooden blade precisely at the man's exposed throat. Raising his hand high into the air, the referee aggressively signals the immediate end of the shockingly one-sided match. Watching in sheer awe, the local soldiers terrifiedly realize the elite Third Knight Order was barely even trying in all their previous exercises. Trembling at the raw, murderous intensity, the spectators marvel at the genuinely lethal fighting spirit burning brightly in the elite soldier's eyes. Staring blankly ahead with hollow eyes, an elite knight mutters a single, obsessive demand for pancakes. Another battle-crazed soldier instantly echoes the exact same ravenous, terrifying chant. The bizarre, food-driven mantra quickly ripples through the fiercely determined and heavily armed ranks of the Third Knight Order. Eyes glowing with primal, unstoppable hunger, the elite warriors loudly continue their terrifyingly synchronized chanting. Screaming the breakfast food like a savage battle cry, the crazed troops unleash their full, horrifying martial aura. Completely misunderstanding the bizarre situation, a local commander assumes this overwhelming, demonic pressure is exactly why they successfully prevented the monster stampede. Watching his elite men fight like bloodthirsty demons over simple food, Justin chuckles darkly from the safety of the sidelines. Shaking his head in utter disbelief, the captain internally mocks his absolute idiot subordinates for getting so violently serious over a meal. Realizing he desperately needs to buy more flour and honey before they leave the barracks, Justin sharply sighs at his simple-minded fools. A towering, suffocating cloud of dust violently kicks up into the sky as the relentless mock battles rage on at full force. Mistaking Justin's mere exasperation for cold tactical brilliance, the local captain deeply praises the truly unfathomable commander of the Third Knight Order. Shivering at the dreadful thought, the local officer silently admits that facing these absolute monsters as actual enemies would be entirely terrifying. Completely ignorant of the high praise, the bloodthirsty elite knights simply continue their terrifying, rhythmic chant for more pancakes. Two massive warriors violently clash their wooden swords together, creating a deafening, explosive crack of splintering wood. As another wild combatant screams and aggressively lunges forward, the referee nervously calls for the next pair while noting the truly terrifying power of appetite. Fast-forwarding a few days, the fully packed elite unit respectfully and warmly thanks the locals for their generous hospitality. Expressing her genuine sadness over their permanent departure, the head chef softly tells Justin she wishes they could have shared a few more recipes. Flashing a highly confident smile, Justin boldly promises to return and formally poach her away once he finally secures his own noble estate. Sweating slightly as the eager chef enthusiastically accepts the offer, Justin abruptly realizes she is completely serious about leaving with him. Offering a final, incredibly warm farewell, the seasoned captain firmly tells the local staff to take good care of themselves. Pivoting sharply on his armored heel, Justin loudly and aggressively commands his fully assembled elite unit to finally move out. The grand, heavy iron gates of the massive estate slowly swing open to allow the imposing military procession to proudly exit. Row after row of heavily armed, battle-hardened knights march perfectly in step down the long, winding cobblestone road. Chatting happily about finally returning to the royal capital, a relaxed soldier is quickly scolded by his stern peer for dropping his guard while marching. Ignoring the harsh reprimand, the men cheerfully joke that at least they will absolutely not have to worry about starving on this journey back. Suddenly noticing a strange, massive commotion up ahead on the road, Justin slowly squints his eyes in slight confusion. The marching soldiers completely halt their steady advance as a massive, roaring crowd violently surges toward the main road. A deafening, explosive roar of pure, unadulterated excitement violently erupts from the thousands of gathered townspeople. Cheering with absolute, overwhelming joy, the grateful citizens desperately wave and scream their thanks to the Third Night Order for saving their town. Showering the heavily armed troops with endless, heartfelt praise, the relieved locals loudly shout their highest blessings for a safe return journey. Smiling proudly at the roaring crowds, the elite soldiers happily admit to themselves that being treated like actual heroes feels incredibly good. A sharp, incredibly familiar young voice suddenly pierces through the deafening cheers of the massive civilian crowd. Spotting the two young children rushing desperately toward the military procession, a stunned knight instantly and warmly calls out their names. Beaming brightly, the children loudly thank Justin for the delicious pancakes, prompting a wonderfully warm, fatherly smile from the fierce commander. Yanking her nervous, weeping father forward, the little girl forcefully makes him properly address the imposing, heavily armored knights. Tears streaming heavily down his face, the father loudly and emotionally praises Captain Vendier for securing stable jobs for injured military veterans. Bowing deeply in pure, unbridled gratitude, the father thanks the captain for personally negotiating with the Margrave to save their entire livelihood. Staring down at the deeply weeping family, Justin softly acknowledges their immense gratitude with quiet, respectful humility. Breaking into a gentle, reassuring smile, the battle-hardened commander simply orders the emotional man to treasure his family and live happily. Waving frantically as the massive army finally resumes its march, the children happily beg their beloved big brother to visit them again someday. A thunderous, booming voice suddenly commands the immediate and absolute attention of the entire departing elite army. Standing perfectly and rigidly at attention, the Margrave's elite knights execute a flawless, highly synchronized military salute. Deeply shocked by the immense, unprecedented display of respect, Justin's vice-captain notes that even the rival knights proudly came to see them off. Riding tall and proud at the very head of the formation, Justin stares silently at the deeply respectful send-off from his former rivals. A profound, overwhelming sense of unity and hard-earned victory heavily settles over the fully assembled ranks of the Third Night Order. Drawing his heavy sword with a sharp, metallic ring, Justin roars a final, explosive command to his incredibly loyal troops. Erupting in a massive, truly triumphant battle cry, the elite soldiers hold their heads incredibly high and proudly march back toward the royal capital. Towering proudly over the capital city, the majestic royal palace stands bathed in the bright daylight. Striding confidently into the grand throne room, Commander Justin de Vendier and Vice Commander Florent de Larmina are formally announced to the royal court. Sitting upon his opulent throne, the commanding king orders the kneeling knights to raise their heads. Praising their successful subjugation mission, the monarch formally requests to hear the full details of the expedition directly from the commander. Bowing his head with absolute respect, Justin calmly agrees to deliver his verbal report to the sovereign. A heavy, suffocating tension quickly fills the grand hall as the assembled nobility fiercely glare at the kneeling knight. Shifting his gaze slightly, Justin acutely senses the intense hostility radiating from the gathered royal court. Scanning the luxurious room, he easily recognizes the most powerful and influential figures of the kingdom intensely scrutinizing him. Mentally cataloging his hostile audience, Justin notes the presence of the high priest, the senior ministers, Lady Diane, the Queen, and the novel's protagonist, Crown Prince Ernest. Addressing the throne with unwavering confidence, Justin explains that their initial monster subjugation mission quickly revealed signs of an impending, devastating stampede. He continues his report, boldly stating that he coordinated with the Margrave to destroy a fragment of the evil god and successfully prevented the bloody stampede. Skeptical of such an unprecedented victory, the king heavily questions the claim and demands to see the physical evidence. Reaching smoothly into his leather pouch, Justin confidently retrieves the dark, neutralized artifact to present to the royal court. Holding the dull stone up for all to see, he firmly declares it to be the fully destroyed evil fragment. Anticipating their severe doubt, Justin humbly requests that the high priest formally appraise the stone's authenticity right there in the throne room. Nodding in agreement, the king immediately orders the hesitant high priest to step forward and examine the mysterious object. Leaning in closely, the seasoned cleric notes the deeply ominous aura still clinging to the dark, shattered rock. Channeling his holy magic, the high priest carefully probes the strange artifact to verify its terrifying origin. A massive shockwave of pure dread violently washes over the cleric as he realizes the stone's true, nightmarish nature. Trembling violently, the pale high priest loudly stammers that the artifact is undoubtedly a genuine fragment of the evil god. Total, absolute chaos violently erupts among the noble ministers as they loudly struggle to believe the infamous Third Night Order actually prevented a stampede. Roaring for silence, the king confirms the artifact's authenticity and praises Justin's undeniable martial valor, supported by a formal letter from the Margrave. Beaming with genuine approval, the king promises a massive reward befitting such incredible service as Justin deeply bows in gratitude. Meanwhile, Lady Diane nervously clutches Prince Ernest's arm as she watches the celebrated commander. Glaring fiercely at the kneeling knight, Prince Ernest gently reassures Diane that he will fiercely protect her from the ruthless man. Catching their deeply paranoid glaring, Justin internally sighs and realizes they genuinely expect him to demand Diane as his royal reward. Shattering their dark expectations, the captain confidently raises his head to clearly announce his chosen reward to the silent court. Attributing the massive victory entirely to his loyal men, Justin humbly requests that his reward be used to overhaul their barracks and significantly improve their daily meals. A stunned, absolutely dead silence instantly crashes over the grand hall as the king stares blankly at the legendary commander. Blinking in pure disbelief, the bewildered monarch slowly repeats the bizarre, incredibly mundane request for better food. A low, booming chuckle slowly escapes the king's lips as the sheer absurdity of the commander's humble request finally registers. Erupting into massive, booming laughter, the highly amused monarch roars that such a trivial demand sounds exactly like a child's innocent wish. Wiping away a tear of mirth, the king curiously asks if Justin is truly satisfied to trade a high noble peerage for something so incredibly trivial. Refusing the temptation of power, Justin firmly explains that prioritizing basic necessities like food and shelter is the absolute foundation of his men's morale. Smiling warmly at the noble response, the king notes that the Margrave's letter regarding the commander's drastically changed demeanor was entirely true. Bowing gracefully, Justin smoothly admits that the incredibly grueling expedition fundamentally changed his entire perspective on life. Slamming his hand down in sheer delight, the ecstatic monarch loudly grants the highly unusual, selfless request without hesitation. Eager to hear the full story, the king happily invites the knights to a royal dinner, which Justin honors with a deeply respectful bow. Watching the highly successful exchange, Prince Ernest fiercely grits his teeth in pure frustration and deep suspicion. Trembling in absolute shock, Diane stares blankly at the departing commander, terrified by the impossible reality that the wicked man seems like a completely different person. Crown Prince Ernest aggressively states he hasn't forgotten the insults and disrespect that man heaped upon them, noting his parents are fascinated by Vendière. Clenching his fist, Ernest firmly suspects a hidden motive and vows to catch Vendière in the act soon enough. Walking down a hallway, the prince abruptly pauses as something catches his attention. Bursting violently through a door, Ernest fiercely demands to know what the villain is doing in there. Justin is seen closely grasping a flustered maid's arm, staring back at the furious prince in sheer surprise. Stepping boldly into the room, Ernest proudly reassures the terrified maid that she is finally safe. Glaring intensely, the prince aggressively accuses Vendière of just hiding his claws in the throne room and threatens to report him to the king. Justin calmly asks what the prince thinks he has done, prompting Ernest to furiously accuse him of trying to lay hands on the helpless girl. A soft, condescending chuckle escapes Justin's lips, deeply infuriating the hostile prince. Staring down the furious royal, Justin coldly lectures that a man who rules by prejudice and assumptions will never make a great statesman. Stammering in absolute outrage, Ernest points at the maid and desperately insists that Justin was forcing his advances on her. Sighing heavily, Justin sharply criticizes the prince's flawed questioning for merely coercing the witness into a predetermined answer. Blushing deeply, the nervous maid politely interrupts the prince's furious tirade. She shyly explains that she dropped a hot teapot from nervousness and that Master Vandier was actually performing healing magic on her burns. The prince stammers in total disbelief as the maid clearly displays the severe burn on her arm. Justin calmly notes the first aid is incomplete due to the interruption but assures her a professional healer can prevent any scarring. Bowing deeply in immense gratitude, the maid apologizes for her clumsiness while Justin urges her to go rest before the healing magic backlash sets in. Without another word, the highly embarrassed maid quickly bows and scurries out of the tense room. A heavy, intensely awkward silence completely envelopes the room as the two men are left entirely alone. Justin mockingly asks if he isn't allowed to perform a good deed, prompting the deeply suspicious prince to demand his true angle. Exploding with raw frustration, Ernest roars that he has every right to be suspicious after all the immense grief Justin has caused them and Diane. Closing his eyes in quiet resignation, Justin solemnly admits that his past actions leave him with much to answer for. Meeting the prince's fiery gaze, Justin firmly declares his absolute intention to prove his reform through actions rather than mere words. Maintaining his cool composure, the commander asks the prince to avoid pinning completely false accusations on him in the future. Furious and highly humiliated, Ernest fiercely orders Justin to avoid any easily misconstrued behavior before aggressively storming off. The prince marches aggressively down the corridor, his heavy footsteps echoing loudly in the tense silence. Watching him leave, Justin scratches his head and admits he was being immature, while Florent dryly notes that the commander baited the royal far too hard. Justin sighs heavily, wondering if the original body's hatred for the prince unconsciously influenced his highly antagonistic behavior. Shaking off the intense political headache, the captain briskly decides to go change his clothes before the upcoming royal banquet. Pacing through the quiet stone halls, Justin openly complains of utter boredom since the grand banquet doesn't start for quite a while. Florent casually suggests taking a stroll in the courtyard, noting that having too much free time is a rare problem for them. Justin hesitates at the bold idea of wandering the royal castle freely, but Florent dryly reminds him he used to do whatever he pleased anyway. Conceding the extremely valid point, Justin assumes he will be heavily surveilled regardless and agrees to step out for a quick walk. Stepping into the crisp evening air, Justin notes that the capital gets surprisingly chilly once the sun finally goes down. A sudden, highly delicate sneeze abruptly shatters the quiet atmosphere of the dark courtyard. Startled by the highly unexpected noise, Justin immediately turns his head to spot a figure hiding in the evening shadows. Peering closely through the dim light, his eyes widen slightly as he recognizes the violently shivering silhouette. A worried maid nervously begs Lady Diane to change into a much warmer dress to combat the freezing night air. Shivering intensely, Diane stubbornly refuses to change, utterly terrified that arriving after the queen would be an unacceptable breach of etiquette. The desperate maid frantically warns the freezing noblewoman that she is absolutely guaranteed to catch a severe cold at this rate. Suddenly, a heavy, deeply warm military coat is smoothly and silently draped over Diane's trembling shoulders. Startled by the sudden, intense warmth, the noblewoman gasps and quickly spins around in pure shock. Diane's eyes widen in absolute terror as she immediately realizes the infamous Lord Vandier is standing directly behind her. Realizing his highly impulsive blunder, Justin internally panics and curses his ingrained older brother instincts for acting without thinking. Blushing furiously, Diane fiercely demands the meaning of this while Justin awkwardly mutters that the cold is a lady's worst enemy. Rejecting his sudden, unwanted kindness, the noblewoman fiercely snaps that she certainly does not need someone like him worrying about her. Trying to aggressively hand the heavy coat back, Diane is immediately interrupted as Justin bluntly tells her to just go change her dress. He practically points out that aggressively sneezing throughout the entire royal banquet would be a far worse breach of etiquette. The deeply relieved maid quickly thanks Lord Vandier on her mistress's behalf while Justin effortlessly dismisses them. Defeated by his absolutely flawless logic, Diane reluctantly agrees to return to her quarters and quickly change clothes. As she turns to leave, the noblewoman shoots one final, deeply complicated glance back at the imposing military commander. Pausing briefly, Diane sincerely thanks him for his genuine concern but fiercely vows that she will never actually trust him. Shrugging off the highly intense hostility, Justin casually replies that he is perfectly fine with her completely justified hatred. The maid and the highly flustered noblewoman quickly vanish down the dimly lit corridor, leaving the captain entirely alone in the freezing courtyard. Walking away, Diane desperately wonders if this highly bizarre act of kindness is just another one of Vendier's wicked, unfathomable schemes. Standing entirely alone in the brutal cold, Justin deeply sighs and mutters to himself that Lady Diane truly hates his guts. He openly admits he cannot blame her, completely acknowledging that the original Justin relentlessly harassed the engaged woman. Shivering violently in the freezing air, Justin realizes he desperately needs to find a replacement coat before Florence scolds him endlessly. A highly violent sneeze violently wrecks the imposing commander's composure as the freezing night air finally takes its terrible toll. Wandering through a dimly lit stone corridor, a group of hungry soldiers loudly complains about their empty stomachs and wonders if their captain is staying out all night. A starving soldier sighs heavily, enviously imagining the incredible feast their commanders must be enjoying at the royal castle banquet. Startled by a sudden noise in the quiet hallway, the wandering men aggressively flinch and snap their attention forward. The stunned soldiers stare in utter disbelief as their completely exhausted commanders slowly trudge into the barracks. Looking completely drained of life, Florent casually explains that dining with the intense royal family was so suffocating they couldn't even taste the food. Auriel ruthlessly piles on the misery, dryly noting that the captain is especially wiped out from surviving a relentless barrage of political interrogations. Snickering wildly, a subordinate mentions the court is buzzing with bizarre rumors about the captain smiling at children and completely losing interest in Lady Diane. Justin groans in absolute humiliation as Auriel gleefully recounts a highly popular rumor questioning if the ruthless commander has been replaced by a magical imposter. The defeated captain violently buries his face in his hands while his highly amused men silently watch his complete emotional breakdown. Offering a purely logical silver lining, Florent calmly points out that the captain's overall reputation has undeniably skyrocketed despite the ridiculous gossip. Asked if he fled the royal banquet to aggressively avoid marriage proposals, Justin bluntly confirms that his only priority is whipping his utterly useless subordinates into shape. A suffocatingly awkward silence instantly crashes over the hall before a highly nervous soldier quietly asks if the harsh insult was directed at them. Smoothly redirecting the tense atmosphere, Justin proudly announces that while he didn't bring physical souvenirs, he does have incredibly good news. Justin happily reveals the men have earned the entire week off and secured a massive royal bonus to completely renovate their crumbling barracks. The highly excited troops passionately celebrate the promise of a new shower room, loudly complaining about the agonizing summer wait times just to wash off their sweat. Pausing dramatically to build absolute maximum tension, Justin finally reveals that their military food budget has been permanently increased. Flashing a fiercely confident smirk, the captain boldly promises his stunned men that they can expect to eat incredibly delicious grub from now on. An absolute, deafening explosion of ecstatic cheering violently rocks the stone barracks as the ravenous soldiers wildly throw their arms into the air. Screaming their eternal loyalty, the crying men fiercely salute as a darkly chuckling Justin aggressively orders them to keep working hard. Strolling thoughtfully down the quiet corridor, Justin realizes he will absolutely need to personally teach the local cooks some of his advanced recipes. Retreating into the absolute safety of his private quarters, the deeply exhausted commander finally sits down at his desk to decompress. Frustrated by the tiny portions at the royal banquet, Justin hungrily rummages through his magical bag for some leftover expedition rations. Happily munching on his midnight snack, the captain easily calculates that they will still have leftover funds even after the major Baroque renovations are completely paid for. Suddenly struck by an absolutely brilliant idea, Justin abruptly pauses his meal and stares thoughtfully into the middle distance. A highly determined glint brightly flashes in his eyes as he immediately remembers an abandoned, totally unused storage room located in the barracks. Clenching his fist in pure, unadulterated culinary excitement, Justin aggressively visualizes building his ultimate dream private kitchenette. The deeply peaceful silence is violently shattered as his highly rambunctious subordinates abruptly burst into the private office. Spotting the leftover military rations, the totally unhinged soldiers immediately demand food and booze from their highly startled captain. Violently smacking his unruly men over the head, an infuriated Justin harshly orders them to knock first while mentally groaning at the incredibly long road of education ahead. A highly detailed time skip perfectly reveals a completely transformed, beautifully organized culinary workspace lined with pristine wooden cabinets. Gleaming magical appliances and perfectly arranged cooking utensils flawlessly decorate the newly constructed, state-of-the-art private kitchen space. The pristine, highly advanced cooking facility stands totally complete and absolutely ready for intense culinary experimentation. Wiping a bead of sweat from his brow, an incredibly eager Justin steps into the room and deeply admires his successfully completed passion project. He marvels at the sleek, highly pristine magical technology seamlessly integrated into the beautiful stone architecture of the renovated room. Inspecting the highly advanced machinery, he happily notes that the magically powered refrigerator and oven are just as incredibly convenient as the appliances from his previous world. Cracking his knuckles with a fiercely confident smirk, Justin rolls up his sleeves and absolutely refuses to waste another second. A blindingly rapid sequence of intense preparation seamlessly flows as the seasoned commander masterfully chops his fresh ingredients. Staring down a perfectly prepped cut of thick meat, Justin loudly declares that it is finally time to properly test out his incredible new kitchen. The heavy metal door of the magical oven is smoothly pulled open to perfectly receive the sizzling, highly seasoned roast. Leaning back with a deeply relaxed smile, Justin casually admits that having time off is great, but he simply gets incredibly bored without something delicious to cook. Wandering the halls in search of a midnight snack, a starving soldier wonders aloud if the captain and the others are staying overnight at the castle. Enviously imagining the incredible castle banquet, another soldier suggests heading out to town for their own feast. Pausing mid-step, the soldiers suddenly notice a distinctly sweet, mouth-watering scent drifting through the air. Eyes widening in sudden realization, they excitedly deduce that the captain must be cooking something in his newly built private kitchen. Driven by pure hunger, the eager subordinates break into a dead sprint down the stone corridor. Bursting violently into the room, the ravenous men enthusiastically demand to know what incredibly tasty food is causing the amazing smell. Furious at the sudden intrusion, Justin fiercely scolds his men for forgetting to knock while they hurriedly apologize. Quickly shifting their focus to the food, the soldiers eagerly ask what he is making as Justin calmly explains he was testing the kitchen by baking sweets. Pulling a hot tray from the magical oven, the captain reveals a perfectly baked batch of beautiful, golden cookies. Strictly ordering his drooling men not to eat them without permission, Justin notes that he wants to brew some tea to accompany the treats. Moving with practiced grace, the seasoned commander carefully brews a steaming pot of rich, aromatic tea. Finally granting them permission to eat, Justin sternly limits them to one cookie each since it was a small test batch. Snatching the warm treats, the highly excited soldiers eagerly take massive, highly satisfied bites. Chewing happily, the men loudly praise the delicious sweets and immediately agree that they pair perfectly with the hot tea. Taking a thoughtful bite of his own creation, Justin silently analyzes the texture and flavor profile. Critiquing his own handiwork, the captain notes they could be better and wonders if baking them without eggs would improve the recipe. Shocked by his harsh self-criticism, the highly impressed soldiers enthusiastically beg him to bake the eggless version next time. Shattering their hopes, Justin firmly states he won't be baking again for a while since this was merely an appliance test. Raising a single finger, the commander dramatically pauses to dangle a highly conditional sliver of hope. Flashing a strict smile, Justin promises to bake more as a special reward only if they perform enough good deeds to fix their terrible public image. The deeply motivated soldiers instantly and aggressively salute, prompting Justin to quietly curse his highly opportunistic subordinates. Exhaling a heavy sigh of sheer exhaustion, the battle-hardened knight begins deeply massaging his sore bicep. Quickly dismissing a subordinate's genuine concern, Justin awkwardly insists that absolutely nothing is wrong with his arm. Sweating slightly, the imposing commander internally admits he absolutely cannot reveal he strained his arm just from kneading thick dough. Deciding he needs a change of pace and more sweet recipes, Justin resolves to visit the local bookstore. Leaving the military barracks behind, the disguised captain smoothly navigates the bustling, sunlit streets of the royal capital. Stepping into the quiet sanctuary of the local bookstore, Justin begins browsing the towering wooden shelves. A soft, highly frustrated gasp suddenly draws Justin's immediate attention to a nearby aisle. Standing on her tiptoes, a disguised woman quietly realizes she desperately needs a step stool to reach a high shelf. Reaching smoothly over her head, Justin effortlessly plucks the thick volume right off the top shelf. Handing the heavy book down to the highly grateful woman, he politely asks if it is the specific one she needed. The woman gasps violently in absolute terror as Justin instantly recognizes her incredibly familiar voice. Staring wide-eyed, Lady Diane nervously questions his presence while Justin casually asks about her highly discreet disguise. Sighing at the totally obvious question, the disguised knight plainly states that he is at the bookstore to purchase books. Lady Diane nervously glances down at the thick baking guide securely resting in the imposing commander's hand. Blinking in absolute, utter bewilderment, the noblewoman stammers as she struggles to process the ruthless knight's bizarre hobby. Narrowing her eyes intensely, Diane glares at him with deeply ingrained political suspicion. Smirking slightly, Justin teasingly asks if she is interested in him, prompting a highly explosive and totally flustered denial. Dropping the joke, he asks where her guards are, and Diane explains her attendant is outside arranging a carriage. Warning her of the severe dangers of wandering unescorted, Justin notes that sneaking out prevents her from using proper royal security. Clenching her book, the highly tense noblewoman stiffly and formally thanks the infamous captain for his unexpected concern. Glaring fiercely up at the towering man, Diane boldly declares that she considers him to be the far greater danger. Conceding the highly valid point with a soft sigh, Justin accepts her intense, totally justified hatred without a fight. Offering a stiff, deeply formal bow, the highly anxious noblewoman rapidly excuses herself from his deeply intimidating presence. Watching her scurry away, the disguised commander stands entirely alone in the quiet aisle. Returning his attention to the wooden shelves, Justin successfully gathers a solid stack of advanced baking books. Tapping the thick volumes together, the heavily built knight prepares to head toward the main checkout counter. Walking through the quiet shop, Justin marvels at the bizarre coincidence while completely forgiving her deeply intense wariness. Relieved to have avoided a massive political headache, his train of thought is violently interrupted. A totally blood-curdling, utterly desperate scream of pure terror violently shatters the peaceful atmosphere of the bookstore. Startled civilians gasp in absolute panic, immediately realizing the horrifying shriek originated from the street directly outside. Clicking his tongue in deep frustration, Justin instantly recognizes the voice and furiously breaks into a dead sprint. Dropping his thick books, the heavily muscled knight explosively kicks off the wooden floorboards to reach the exit. Bursting violently through the bookstore doors, Justin aggressively scans the chaotic street for the source of the terrible scream. Horrified, he instantly spots Lady Diane desperately struggling against two highly aggressive, heavily cloaked assailants. Shoving her terrified mate aside, the violent thugs forcefully grab the struggling noblewoman and aggressively demand compliance. Gritting his teeth, Justin instantly deduces that the highly organized kidnappers clearly know her true royal identity. Violently yanking her forward, the desperate kidnappers fiercely try to drag the screaming woman away before city guards arrive. Exploding forward with blinding speed, Justin instantly closes the massive gap and launches a highly devastating flying kick. The brutal, high-speed strike flawlessly connects, sending a massive shockwave of kinetic force straight through the attacker's guard. Screaming in absolute agony, the completely blindsided thug is violently launched backward across the hard cobblestone street. Standing protectively in front of the highly terrified noblewoman, the furious commander coldly informs the kidnappers that they picked the worst possible timing. Cracking his knuckles with a deeply murderous glare, Justin demands their immediate surrender while fiercely threatening their very lives. Justin stared down the attackers, warning them it was in their best interest to surrender quietly if they wanted to survive. Cursing the highly unexpected presence of a skilled guard, the desperate kidnappers resolved to capture their royal target at all costs. Lunging fiercely toward the noblewoman, the thug was immediately intercepted as Justin roared that they would not succeed on his watch. Springing into violent action, the seasoned commander aggressively pinned the flailing assailant and fiercely ordered him not to move. Meanwhile, a second attacker viciously struck the persistent maid, violently knocking her back to clear a path to the noblewoman. Horrified by the brutal physical assault, Lady Diane screamed Annabella's name in pure terror as her loyal companion collapsed. Without a single second of hesitation, Justin released his captive and exploded forward to assist the highly vulnerable women. Checking on the battered maid, Justin asked if she was okay while a bleeding Annabella desperately urged him to prioritize saving her lady. The second kidnapper aggressively dragged a screaming Lady Diane away, violently ordering her to be quiet and cooperate with her abduction. Unleashing his absolutely explosive speed, the furious commander rapidly closed the massive distance between himself and the fleeing kidnapper. Leaping high into the crisp air, Justin violently vaulted directly over the terrified noblewoman to physically intercept the hostile threat. Crashing down with utterly devastating force, the heavily muscled knight unleashed a brutal, high-speed strike to effortlessly crush the attacker's guard. Realizing they completely picked the wrong opponent, the severely battered thugs desperately decided to bolt before the city guards arrived. Glaring intensely at the rapidly retreating enemies, Justin roared with fierce authority that he absolutely would not let them get away. Launching himself forward like a violently fired cannonball, the commander aggressively pursued the fleeing kidnappers down the chaotic street. Closing the crucial gap in mere seconds, Justin fiercely reached out to violently apprehend the highly desperate criminals. Suddenly, the thunderous clatter of heavy hooves echoed violently as a mysterious, fast-approaching carriage recklessly swerved into the crowded street. Screeching to an incredibly abrupt halt, the dark getaway carriage perfectly blocked Justin's immediate path to the heavily battered kidnappers. Throwing the heavy wooden door wide open, an unseen accomplice aggressively ordered the injured thugs to get inside immediately. Scrambling desperately into the highly secure vehicle, the terrified assailants successfully evaded the imposing commander's relentless pursuit. Watching the getaway carriage speed aggressively away into the busy city, Justin clicked his tongue in pure frustration and muttered that they escaped. Apologizing for his incredibly rough handling of the highly volatile situation, Justin was immediately reassured by Diane that he completely saved them. Remembering her brutally fallen companion, the deeply shaken noblewoman frantically turned her intense attention back to Annabella. Rushing over to the entirely unmoving maid, Diane stammered in absolute panic as she desperately assessed her friend's highly battered condition. Kneeling down smoothly, Justin quickly checked the maid's pulse and calmly reassured Diane that she simply fainted once the extreme tension broke. Explaining the grim situation, Diane revealed they clearly realized something was suspicious when their carriage home arrived with an entirely unknown driver. Just as heavily armed city guards finally rushed onto the chaotic scene, Justin calmly noted the attackers were already driven off to prevent causing a massive scene. Effortlessly scooping the completely unconscious Annabella into his incredibly strong arms, the towering commander prepared to safely escort the highly shaken women away. Urging them to immediately leave before a massive crowd gathered, Justin carefully carried the maid while a highly nervous Diane instantly agreed. Walking steadily through the bustling city, Justin sincerely praised Annabella's incredibly admirable loyalty for throwing herself in harm's way to perfectly protect Diane. Smiling softly at the high praise, Diane explained that Annabella was actually a dear friend from the Royal Academy and far more than just a simple maid. Looking incredibly closely at the unconscious woman's face, Justin finally recognized her true identity from his own highly eventful academy days. A freshly summoned, heavily secured royal carriage soon arrived to safely transport the deeply shaken noblewomen straight back to the majestic castle. Commanding the newly arrived driver to head straight for the royal castle, Justin firmly ordered him to leave urgent word with the gatekeeper regarding their highly injured passenger. Bowing deeply in pure, unadulterated gratitude, Diane emotionally thanked Captain Vendier for his incredible protection and visibly shuddered at what might have happened without his presence. Humbly accepting her immense thanks as a knight's basic duty, Justin firmly advised the noblewoman to critically keep her highly dangerous incognito outings within reason. Pausing strategically before the carriage departed, the seasoned commander turned back to offer one final, highly crucial piece of political advice. Justin heavily warned Diane to actively investigate her original driver, carefully noting the man might be severely injured from a prior brutal ambush. However, he darkly added that if the original driver simply fled the scene, he was highly likely an active member of the treacherous kidnappers. Deeply confused by his highly intense secrecy, Diane curiously asked why Justin requested his direct involvement in her spectacular rescue be kept completely quiet. Sighing heavily at the exhausting political climate, Justin explained he desperately wanted to avoid malicious rumors accusing him of staging the entire kidnapping just to claim political credit. Struck by his incredibly pragmatic and highly cynical foresight, the noblewoman hesitated as she fully realized the brutal truth of the capital's ruthless political landscape. Effortlessly dismissing the highly inevitable gossip, Justin smiled softly and stated he was simply glad the future queen of the realm was completely safe. Teasingly, the highly confident knight suggested she should definitely marry the prince soon before getting violently dragged into another highly dangerous political incident. Catching her completely off guard, Justin bluntly noted that her father had securely contacted her to avoid the powerful temple forcefully collecting the highly sought-after saintess. Blushing furiously at his incredibly blunt and highly forward remarks, Diane aggressively ordered her driver to depart at once to immediately escape the incredibly awkward conversation. The heavy wooden wheels loudly and rhythmically rattled against the rough cobblestone as the secured royal carriage swiftly sped away into the bustling city. Staring entirely blankly out the moving carriage window, Diane deeply wondered what in the world had actually gotten into the formerly ruthless Captain Vendier. Completely baffled by his sudden, highly genuine kindness, the incredibly conflicted future queen realized she truly did not know what to think of the mysterious man anymore. A heavy, contemplative silence falls as the weight of recent events settles. Slumping back, she sighs in sheer exhaustion at the terrifying kidnapping incident. Logically, she deduces Lady Diane will be strictly confined after the uproar. Suddenly, a sharp knock echoes through the quiet space, breaking her thoughts. An officer respectfully interrupts Captain Vendier to deliver a letter from home. Frustrated by relentless interruptions, Vendier opens the letter with a heavy sigh. The letter contains a stark directive demanding that he return home immediately. Staring blankly at the paper, he questions the unbelievably brief, cold message. Disgusted, he mocks the incredibly businesslike nature of the cold family summons. Resentment bubbles up as he reflects on how emotional neglect drove him. Rationalizing, he figures his freedom is better than his second brother's miserable fate. Pushing aside bitter family musings, a quiet moment passes in deep thought. Marching into administration, he startles a nervous clerk by requesting immediate assistance. Formally, he instructs the clerk to submit a royal leave extension request. Checking for loose ends, he is promptly handed a stack of documents. Pausing mid-signature, Vendier notices something very unusual about the trembling clerk. Pointing out her pale complexion, he causes the flustered clerk to panic. With uncharacteristic empathy, he gently advises her to rest and support others. Absolute silence fills the room following his completely unexpected display of kindness. The clerks morbidly wonder if his compassion signals impending disaster, unaware he listens. Brushing off their dramatic reactions, Vendier casually orders them to behave themselves. Once he leaves, the gossiping clerks note his extra time off displeased him. Another brief silence lingers as he heads out of the bustling office. Suddenly, his attention is drawn to his horse, Eleanor, acting very strangely. A stern voice dramatically declares that Vendier has finally shown himself. A tense and silent standoff ensues as a formidable figure blocks him. Constant Lorge, vice-captain of the First Night Order, aggressively identifies himself. Annoyed, Vendier dryly reminds Constant they were classmates, but protocol is insisted upon. Squaring his massive shoulders, Constant prepares to deliver his strict official decree. Shockingly, Constant officially places Justin de Vendier under arrest for plotting an abduction. Utterly blindsided by the absurd accusation, Vendier utters a single confused sound.